Chapter 1. What is it like to be a dorm manager in the God realm? Answer: we receive customers every day. Fang Cang has been feeling a little tired lately. As the god's descent ceremony approaches, more and more gods are coming to report, which makes him even busier. A year ago, he died of illness in his hometown. At the moment he lost consciousness, he was summoned by the core of the world of God. He was quite excited at first, thinking that he had encountered the legendary time travel and rebirth, and was thinking about how to hide his identity and blend in here. But when he learned that most of the people here were reborn, he lost interest. If it is not rare, it means it is not valuable. In fact, most of the gods in the divine world are reincarnated like him. After they died for various reasons in their previous lives, if they meet the requirements, the core of the world will grant them the status of gods. After becoming a god, no matter how long they lived in the previous life, they will start at the age of 20, and these people are collectively referred to as acquired gods. Correspondingly, those who were born in the divine world and whose parents are gods are innate gods. In fact, there is no essential difference between the two. The innate gods will participate in the god descent ceremony at the age of 20, which ensures that all gods start from the same starting line. Fang Cang's luck was not good. When he first came here, the previous god's descent ceremony had just ended, which meant that he had to stay here for a whole year. Fortunately, such days are about to end. Today is his last shift as a dormitory manager, and tomorrow is the day for the god's descent ceremony. Speaking of the god's descent ceremony, this is the necessary process for everyone to become a god. Whether they are innate gods or acquired gods, before participating in the ceremony, they are no different from ordinary people. Only after this will they possess divine power, establish their own kingdom of God, develop their faith, and have their own followers. Only then could they be called true gods. Fang Cang, it's time to receive the guests. Come on. A voice suddenly interrupted Fang Cang's wandering thoughts. He hurriedly got up and walked downstairs. Niu Lao was waiting for him. In Happy Home, Fang Cang got the position of dormitory manager in exchange for helping with reception, and his reward was a small house with its own kitchen and bathroom. At least this way he can live more comfortably. After all, he will be staying here for a whole year. The new madam is named Niu Huan, and she is the person in charge here. Ever since Fang Cang took over the reception work, he became a full-time driver, bringing the reincarnated gods here every day. In the divine world, there are many dormitories for gods like Happy Home, and they only receive a small number of guests. Despite this, the two are still very busy every day. Downstairs in the dormitory, the strong and powerful Niu Huan stood there, and behind him were 3 young people, a man and 2 women. Come with me. Fang Cang greeted Niu Huan, then took the 3 people into the room and registered them. Name. Fang Cang held a small notebook in his hand and spoke to the man in front of him. Monkai. Gender. Gender. Fang Cang repeated the sentence again. He was not trying to cause trouble. These people came from different planets, and it was not uncommon for their appearance to not match their actual gender. The customs of some planets even allowed for men and women to cross-dress. Man. The man named Monkai said in a muffled voice, seeming a little unhappy, his 2 plump pectoral muscles rising and falling with his breathing. From what planet? The Wild Continent. Fang Cang asked questions one by one and finished the registration in a short while. Take this bracelet and follow the instructions on the wall. Fang Cang handed a blue bracelet to Monkai and pointed to the wall next to him. Come on, next one. May I have your name? When facing beautiful women, his attitude is very friendly. Night. Finished the last day's work and completed the handover with Niu Huan. Fang Cang lay in his little room, his eyes moving slowly, unconsciously counting the patterns on the ceiling. This was his last moment of peace. Tomorrow I will participate in the God's Descent ceremony and officially become a son of God. I heard that to open up the kingdom of God, one has to go to another world called God's realm. I wonder what my kingdom will be like. Fang Cang turned over and continued to fantasize. Everyone's kingdom of God is different, and correspondingly, their followers are also different. During this year, Fang Cang consulted a large amount of information, which gave him a general understanding of how the world works. The divine realm and the divine domain belong to 2 different planes. The world he is in now is the divine world. As for the divine realm, they need to descend with their consciousness to reach it. The flow of time there is 100 times faster than it is now, which gives them enough time to develop the kingdom of God. The attributes of the kingdom of God are random. Before God descends, no one knows what their kingdom of God will look like. Fang Cang had read in the information that most of the God's followers were intelligent creatures in the form of animals or humans, and only a few with powerful talents would obtain some legendary creatures. For example, dragon. Of course, the probability of this happening is extremely low, and Fang Cang has never expected it. His goal is just to be no worse than most people. After all, having a powerful follower is very important for his future development. Especially when he fights with gods from other civilizations, his followers are the real main force in the battle. The world is actually much bigger than you imagine. The term gods does not only refer to humans. In addition to human civilization, there are several alien civilizations that have the ability to descend to the divine realm and establish a divine kingdom. For countless years, several civilizations have been fighting and invading each other, each thinking that they are the orthodox gods and no one is willing to submit to anyone else. Of course, where there is war there are sacrifices. The planet where Fang Cang is currently located was the one that was transformed by a certain god king using his kingdom after he died in battle. And there are 108 such kingdoms of God in the entire human civilization. 108 god king planets represent 108 god kings who died in battle. Every god rises through countless battles. This is what Niu Huan once said. That time when the two of them were drinking together, Lao Niu seemed to have something on his mind. When you drink too much, you become talkative. He talked to Fang Cang. Wars have never stopped. It is really not easy for humans to gain a foothold in the universe. Do you know where these god king planets came from? Only those god kings who died in battle would hand over their kingdoms to civilization. And most of the god kings did not leave behind their kingdoms after they died in battle. Their kingdoms would have collapsed in the battles long ago. The few that survived by chance became our habitat. Their remaining dependents can also stay here to recuperate. When humanity faces a life or death situation, the followers of the God King will once again join the battle until victory is achieved. Or all of them will be killed or wounded. Chapter 2. Early morning. Several huge shuttles hovered over the Xingfu community. Thousands of newly promoted gods gathered here, lining up and boarding the shuttles one by one. The shuttle is a unique means of transportation in the divine world. Fang Cang does not understand the principle behind it, he only knows that it is operated by divine power. The special environment has created a special development direction. All technologies in the divine world are developed based on divine power. For example, the bracelet that everyone wears. In Fang Cang's view, the bracelet is equivalent to the mobile phone and computer and ID card plus, in his previous life. It has a wide range of functions, but most of them require divine power to operate. Fang Cang does not have divine power now, so he can only use some of the functions through manual operation. Buzz. The shuttle slowly rose up, and mysterious and complex patterns covered the entire body of the shuttle, with faint flashes of light. Fang Cang leaned back in the comfortable seat. After the initial shaking, the shuttle started. It only took a moment from stillness to movement, and the strong feeling of weightlessness made Fang Cang's face turn pale, and he hurriedly grabbed the handrail. This was his first time riding a shuttle. The shuttle was moving very fast. Through the window, one could see that the surrounding environment had completely turned into rays of light, rapidly retreating backwards. Brother Fang, there is a button under the armrest. Pressing it will offset the feeling of weightlessness when the shuttle is activated. The black-haired young man sitting next to Fang Cang reached out to give him pointers. Why didn't you say so earlier? Fang Cang rolled his eyes, reached out and touched it, and it was indeed as he said. I thought you knew. The young man chuckled. The young man's name is Luu. He came here half a year ago. Unlike the others, Luu is a native innate god. His parents are both gods, and belong to the most common ordinary family in the world of gods. Luu was lively and active by nature. According to him, his parents thought he was too annoying at home, so they sent him here so that he could make some friends. Fang Cang himself is also a talkative person. Luu would often tell him things related to the divine world, and Fang Cang would tell him stories about the underworld. After a few interactions, the two became friends, and this time they will go to participate in the god's descent ceremony together. The shuttle moved forward. Luu was the type of person who could not sit still. Most of the time during the journey, he was the one talking and Fang Cang was the one listening. He could tell Fang Cang stories about famous people in the god realm like the back of his hand. Fang Cang could not help but wonder if he was a paparazzi. How can a man be so gossipy? I don't know how long it took, but amid Lu's nagging, finally, they arrived at their destination. After finally quieting down, Fang Cang hurried downstairs. As soon as he stepped out of the shuttle, a wave of sound almost knocked him to the ground. The shuttle brought them to an extremely large square, where they saw a crowd of people, so dense that it stretched as far as the eye could see. All the new gods from the 5 major regions on July Star gathered here this year, and from time to time large shuttles transported more gods. Being there, with tens of thousands of people gathered together and talking to each other, the noisy sound made his head buzz. At this time, Luu also got off the shuttle and looked at the scene in amazement. Brother Fang! Look, what's going on? What? After arriving, the 2 men hid in the crowd and waited. During this time, Luu kept trying to chat with Fang Cang, but in this environment, Fang Cang could only see his mouth opening and closing and could not hear clearly what he was saying. Fang Cang was both impressed and speechless about this. I said. Buzz. Without any warning, a huge divine thought descended on the square. A huge pressure enveloped everyone, and the square with hundreds of thousands of people fell silent in an instant. Fang Cang's face turned pale. He felt as if his heart had stopped. The suffocating feeling caused by the huge pressure made it difficult for him to breathe. Fortunately, that divine thought was fleeting and did not last long, but everyone seemed to have walked through the gates of hell. At some point, 2 figures, one black and one white, appeared above the square. More and more people noticed the 2 figures, but no one dared to speak. Fang Cang looked up at the sky above the square in horror. At this moment he truly witnessed how powerful the gods of this world were. He felt that if the other party wanted to crush him to death, it would not be any more difficult than crushing an ant. After a while, when everyone had calmed down a little, the white-haired man spoke. His voice was not loud, but it rang extremely clearly in everyone's ears. I am Kang Yang. I will be in charge of today's God's Descent ceremony. The man in black next to him had an indifferent expression, quietly observing everyone with his eyes opening and closing, and seemed to have no intention of speaking. They are true gods. A faint voice sounded beside him. Fang Cang looked at Luu speechlessly. His calves were still trembling, but he didn't forget to talk. Didn't you see that these more than 100,000 people were all so quiet? He understood what Luu meant. In the divine world, true gods were already considered the most powerful fighters and ordinary people could not easily see them. Every true god has condensed the Godhead, and they can already project the kingdom of God into the divine realm. It can be said that no matter in the divine realm or the divine domain, the true gods are the ones who can decide the direction of a war. You may have already learned something about the God's Descent ceremony. Now I will tell you a few key points that everyone needs to remember. Kang Jiang's voice sounded again, his tone was neither hurried nor slow, but it could not be ignored by everyone. Everyone listened carefully, even Luu closed his mouth and looked up into the sky with a serious expression. After the gods descend, you will descend into your respective kingdoms of God with your ideology. At that time, you will need to communicate with the world power of the kingdom of God, and the kingdom of God will grant you innate divine skills. You only have one gifted divine skill, and you will only have this one chance in your life. Use it well, as it will determine the upper limit of your future achievements. Then, according to the different attributes of the kingdom of God, find or create the core followers that best suit you, and do your best to cultivate their faith and enhance their combat power. Only then will you have the strength to deal with the next challenge. And the area where the kingdom of God is located is called the land of God's descent. All the sons of God will be born there, including the sons of God from other civilizations. Before you have completely taken control of the kingdom of God, its movement is beyond your control. This means that you are likely to encounter them in this process. Having said that, Kang Yang slowly glanced at the crowd and his voice became more serious. Every god rose after experiencing countless wars. Struggle is not prohibited in human civilization, especially at your current stage. Therefore, if you meet in the divine realm, you don't need to worry too much, just fight. This is a test for you and a process of accumulating experience. I only have one request. If we encounter a son of God from the same race, the victorious party must leave at least 1,000 core followers for the losing party, so that the other party at least has a chance to start over. If you encounter a son of God from another civilization, then do your best. Kill them. Chapter 3. Some are happy and some are sad. Whether it was panic or excitement, King Yang's words made the 100,000 people in the square show different states. Fang Cang could not deny that the rise of a civilization would inevitably involve countless sacrifices, and war was deeply hated by people in any era. For example, in the country where he lived in his previous life, countless martyrs fought one after another, and many people sacrificed their lives in the process of building civilization, which eventually brought people peaceful and stable living conditions. People hate war and are afraid of war, but sometimes they have to go through it. In his previous life, he had seen many people calling for an end to war on the internet, and some even condemned the soldiers who participated in the war. But they never thought that if it weren't for them, how would those people have the opportunity to speak out on the internet? He also doesn't like war because it brings pain to people, but he doesn't reject war. It's a simple truth that if no one is willing to stand up, then others will bully you. In this world, perhaps the ways of war are more advanced and the scenes of war are more grand, but in essence there is actually no difference. If you don't fight, others will, and in the end, as one gains while the other loses, you will completely lose your foothold. He doesn't have much sense of belonging to the God clan yet, and it seems too false for him to say some righteous words, but for the sake of living a new life and having better development, he will not choose to retreat. A majestic divine thought filled the entire square, and Fang Cang quietly closed his eyes. This time the divine consciousness was very gentle, and everyone felt like they were bathing in a warm ocean. The sea water turned into a pair of soft arms, gently embracing everyone. Nourished by the divine power, Fang Cang felt the center of his eyebrows beating gently, as if a young sprout was quietly growing in the fertile soil. The young buds are tender but extremely tenacious, pushing away the soil again and again until they break through the soil and stretch their branches to face the sunlight. Divine thought. Fang Cang felt very strange at this moment. Although his eyes were closed, he was fully aware of the situation around him. He saw Liu with his eyes closed and a peaceful face. I saw a man behind me breathing heavily, as if he had reached a critical point. Faint divine thoughts were sweeping across the square. Obviously, many people had succeeded. In the divine realm, the divine consciousness of the Son of God can only cover a few meters around the body. Fang Cang had read the information before, which described that this situation was due to the suppression of the physical body. Only when consciousness descended in the divine realm could the divine consciousness spread thoroughly and take effect. Even so, Fang Cang was having a lot of fun, controlling his spiritual thoughts to look at this and that. Occasionally, when he encountered other people's spiritual thoughts, he would touch them and say hello. Until he felt a divine thought enveloping him. Fang Cang. Liu. Brother Fang, do you think my mind is flexible? Liu's slightly excited voice sounded in his mind. Can divine thoughts also transmit sound? Feeling the divine consciousness shrinking into a tentacle and swaying around, Fang Cang didn't know how to comment on it for a moment. Have you been through anything, bro? Kang Yang, is Xiao Xiao also old enough? Above the square, Kang Yang maintained his spiritual consciousness, silently paying attention to the girl in the corner of the square. After hearing the voice transmission, he shifted his attention elsewhere and glanced at the man in black behind him. General Mo, your young master should take care of his own affairs first. If he dares to have any thoughts about Xiao Xiao, don't blame me for breaking his legs. Young people should handle their own affairs. It is not appropriate for us to always interfere. You can ignore it, but I mean what I say. Kang Yang looked at his old friend expressionlessly, then added. Let's wait until he achieves some results. You still have to give some face. Mo raised the corner of his mouth and looked at his son in the square. He and Kang Yang have known each other for many years and had a child in the same year, so the relationship between the two families was naturally good. He was affiliated with the military, so he didn't need to come. The god's descent ceremony only required one person. As true gods, they were usually very busy. However, both of their children were going to participate this time, so he came to take a look. My son is very lively by nature. It would be a good thing if he could marry my old friend's daughter. However, judging from my old friend's attitude, it seems that he is not very satisfied with his son. I have neglected to discipline him over the years. Mo Zhang thought silently and decided to teach his son a lesson when he got home. If he used a little force to bend the crooked branch, he could still straighten it. Ha! Chew! Oh shit, that was a huge sneeze. Fang Cang looked at the guy behind him with some disdain. Ha, sorry, I couldn't help it. The man behind him had long straight black hair and quickly apologized to Fang Cang. My hair is so smooth, I wonder what shampoo I use. Fang Cang complained in his heart but said it was okay, after all, the other person had apologized. I'm so sorry, my name is Mo Chen, what's your name, brother? We can take care of each other when we get to the divine realm. The man named Mo Chen said this while putting his hands in his hair and putting it behind his head. My name is Fang Cang. Yeah, I'll remember that. We can team up together and beat him up. Well, there's a chance. Don't hit a smiling person. Seeing that the other party had a good attitude, Fang Cang also cooperated with a few polite words, but he didn't take what he said about forming a team seriously. There are more than 100,000 people here alone, not to mention the more than 100 other planets. It is said that everyone will hold the ceremony on the same day. That is to say, by that time, there will be at least 10 million sons of God in human civilization alone. If we include the sons of gods from other civilizations, the probability of the two meeting each other with this number can be directly ignored. Maybe one of them is unlucky and gets killed along the way, making it even less likely that they will meet. After the conversation ended, Fang Cang withdrew his mind and ignored this person, continuing to wait quietly. He felt a little puzzled. He didn't know why he hadn't sensed the aura of the divine realm yet. Everyone else had their eyes closed, and he didn't know what was going on. He wondered if it was his problem or if everyone was like this. Just as Fang Cang was daydreaming, an ancient and vast aura permeated between heaven and earth. Here it comes. Fang Cang stopped his random thoughts instantly, gathered his thoughts, and calmly felt the breath. No one knew where the source of this breath came from, yet it seemed to be everywhere. Within it was a huge divine thought that was constantly vibrating between heaven and earth. With every vibration, the breath from the divine realm deepened a bit. That was King Yang's divine thought. At this time, everyone in the square has already felt the breath of the divine realm. Fang Cang tried to integrate his divine thoughts into it. As King Yang's divine thoughts continued to rise and fall, oscillate, until the frequency was consistent. There was no other thought in his mind. The strange rhythm seemed to imply some kind of law, which caused his mind to continue to extend and float, and his whole body became ethereal. Divine Realm. The place where God descended. New consciousnesses descended one after another, and after wandering for a while, they were attracted by the nearby planets. These consciousnesses drifted towards different planets. Then get close. Then immersed in it. Countless planets twinkled one after another, welcoming their gods. Chapter 4. Darkness, Death, Chaos. The smell of filth permeates the world. Fang Cang's divine consciousness turned into a consciousness in this world. At this moment, he was looking around with a frown. As far as the eye can see, there are desolate lands, crooked woods, and countless dead bones buried in the soil. The occasional skull that is exposed has already been occupied by various poisonous insects. What kind of start is this? Fang Cang scratched his head. Although he knew that the kingdom of each son of God was different, it didn't look like there were any living people here. How to find a family without anyone? Although followers can also be animals, it seems that even wild animals are rare here. You can't just find a worm, right? Fang Cang watched a 1-meter-long centipede crawling past him. Hiss. It's not impossible. The Zerg, which was called one of the 4 great natural disasters in the literary works of his previous life, was extremely powerful. He was not afraid of it, but he could not count any insect he caught as a Zerg. The impression I have of the Zerg is that they have various combat arms, brain worms, and the giant mother nest that can reproduce. The various insect species have clear division of labor, forming a well-equipped combat system. When they attack, they are overwhelming, leaving no grass behind wherever they pass. Fang Cang tried to spread his divine consciousness. In an instant, the divine consciousness covered an area of dozens of kilometers around. Fang Cang. So exaggerated. The gap between this and the divine realm is too huge. He couldn't help but think of King Yang's divine consciousness that covered 100,000 people. If he was in the divine realm, how big would the range of the other party's divine consciousness be? In his divine perception, countless images gathered into huge amounts of information and rushed into his mind. I was caught off guard by this sudden change and was dazzled for a moment. It took me a while to gradually adapt. Just as he expected, the main part of this world was like this. Within a few dozen kilometers, the environment had hardly changed. It was filled with all kinds of miasma, poisonous insects, and ferocious beasts. Death and killing were going on all the time. There were no absolute natural enemies or distinction between the strong and the weak here. A giant spider ate a poisonous insect the size of a finger, and was then swallowed by a python hiding in a tree. A bird, waiting for an opportunity, swooped down and tried to take advantage of the opportunity to attack the python, but before it could do so, it was hunted down by a black panther that jumped out of the woods. So, the python and the black panther fought together. The black panther used its agility to continuously inflict more wounds on the python. At one moment, the python suddenly swung its tail hard, and the black panther couldn't dodge and was knocked to the ground in an instant. The python did not hesitate and wrapped its body around the black panther the moment he fell to the ground. The black panther was biting the python frantically in its arms. As large pieces of flesh and blood were torn off, the python's body became tighter and tighter. Bursts of bone-breaking sounds came from the black panther's body, and blood mixed with unknown fragments flowed out of its mouth until the black panther died. The python loosened its body and swallowed the black panther bit by bit until its stomach bulged and the black panther disappeared completely. The python was just about to find a place to slowly digest the food when it suddenly twitched violently. Then its entire body twisted wildly and rolled on the ground, knocking the surrounding trees toppled. After a while, the python stopped struggling, and a black liquid flowed out of its mouth. It was no longer able to breathe. It all originated from the insect that was swallowed by the spider at the beginning. As the gastric juice digested it, the insect was exposed in the body of the python. Who would have thought that the toxins it carried could kill a python in a moment? Wonderful! Fang Cang clapped his hands dryly. This was just one of the scenes he perceived. In this world, similar things happened every moment. Killing and death became the main theme of this world. Is this my kingdom of God? It doesn't look like a place for good people. Fang Cang had a headache. This world seemed fierce, but it was difficult to form large-scale effective combat power in such an environment. Moreover, there is only one race of followers. It is impossible for him to rule over all creatures and match them with each other. He can only choose one race and then plan different development directions from it. For a moment he didn't know where to start. That's right. Fang Cang slapped his head and almost forgot such an important thing. Innate magical skills. This matter was extremely important to the gods, but he was so busy watching the fun that he actually forgot about it. What do I need to do? Fang Cang recalled Kang Yang's words. Yes, the power to communicate with the world. But how should we communicate? Fang Cang was a little confused. He was an atheist in his previous life and had no experience with such fantasy things. What is world power? Is it the energy of this world? Or is it the consciousness of this world? So where should these consciousnesses exist? If the kingdom of God is likened to a person, then he should be in this person's body right now, and the world consciousness of the kingdom of God should be in. It should be everywhere. Fang Cang applauded himself, and his thoughts became clearer and clearer. What's everywhere? Mosquitoes? Definitely not. The earth? That's a bit of a stretch. What about air? Air? Wrong. He suddenly thought of the breath he felt at the beginning. Darkness, death, and chaos are the main themes of this world and represent the attributes of this world. This breath is everywhere. It belongs to the energy of the kingdom of God and also represents the will of the kingdom of God. Fang Cang's eyes glowed, and his spiritual thoughts spread out violently. Mountains and rivers, earth, river, plants, insect, beast. He tried his best to expand his spiritual consciousness to a farther place, and felt carefully that every inch of space swept by his spiritual consciousness was filled with the breath that belonged only to this world. All living things, every blade of grass and every tree, even the inconspicuous stone, were entangled in this aura. As if attracted, the aura began to gather towards Fang Cang. Evil and darkness seemed to be the power from the abyss, and powerful forces so strong that they were tangible were gathering in the same direction. The black color represents darkness. Gray represents death. Purple represents chaos. The three colors of world power are entangled together, constantly entangled, fused, and then separated again. At this time, Fang Cang's figure had already been submerged by the power of the world. The rich power of the world formed a huge cocoon of light around him, but Fang Cang, who was in it, was completely unaware of it. His body was still in the divine realm, but his consciousness had descended into the divine kingdom. The forces of the world wrapped up his conscious body and merged into it bit by bit. As more and more world forces were integrated into it, his divine thoughts were also quietly transforming. Divine realm, a dark purple divine pattern gradually appeared on Fang Cang's forehead. A trace of divine power quietly grew in his body. As if sensing something, King Yang and Mo Zhang simultaneously turned their gazes towards where Fang Cang was. It's pretty fast. Well, the first son of God has appeared, but we don't know what the nature of the kingdom of God is. Kang Yang retracted his gaze and looked at his daughter. At this moment, she had her eyes closed tightly, her consciousness still in the kingdom of God. A strand of hair was floating in front of her smooth forehead, but there was no sign of divine patterns. At the same time, in the kingdom of God, Fang Cang opened his eyes. A message appeared in his heart. It's like something that comes naturally to me. Ability that runs deep in his blood. Talented skill, Dead Spirit. Chapter 5. Dead. Fang Cang's first reaction when he saw this name was the undead race in the game. The undead have appeared in many games and novels. Their status in online literature is the same as that of the Zerg, and they are also one of the 4 natural disasters. But he immediately realized that this was not a game, and he did not have the ability to create soldiers with one click like in the game. He didn't know whether there were undead in this world. If not, how could he create them with just one ability? You know, the birth of a life must conform to the rules of this world. In his understanding, the undead is actually a process of transformation of life forms, from a living person to a dead person. The unit remains unchanged, but it just changes the way of survival. If we think about it more carefully, humans rely on the brain, heart, and several physiological systems in the body to maintain life. So what do the dead rely on to survive? The soul? Do souls really exist in this world? Maybe. After all, he is now the ideology. Limited by the memories of his previous life, Fang Cang found that he was being a little too serious. Since gods existed, why couldn't the undead exist as well? Obviously, talking about science here is unscientific in itself. Even if it really doesn't work in the end, he will think of other ways. After all, the skill of necromancer gives him this possibility, which makes him unable to stop thinking about that aspect. Innate divine skill, necromancer, can dominate the power of death, making the target alive in a dead state, or dead in a living state, an ability between life and death. The information about the innate magical skills has always existed in his mind. The hint brought to him by the power of the world is very brief, but the information expressed in it is very intriguing. Since I can't figure it out, I might as well give it a try. Fang Cang quickly made a decision. He scanned with his mind and found a target. It was a pile of exposed dry bones. No one knew what creature it came from. It looked like it had been dead for many years. The bones were yellowed, and some of the broken parts had become fibrotic, making them look very brittle. Fang Cang used his skills on the dry bones, and the weak divine power that had just emerged in his body immediately transformed into a strange grey energy. The energy surged out and then covered the dry bones. Watching the energy penetrate inside and sensing it slightly, he found that the divine power in his body could only support him to use his skills 10 times. Fang Cang frowned. This was not right. Even if his divine power is small, as a son of God, he should not be able to use only 10 skills. If so, even if the time flow rate in God's realm is 100 times faster, it would be difficult for him to develop and expand a race. He didn't know what the situation was like for others, but from the information he had read, the Son of God could use his innate skills directly on a tribe. How many people were there in a tribe? There are at least thousands or tens of thousands. When faced with this situation, he would not think that his ability was special and consumed a lot of divine power, but that he must have made a mistake somewhere. Here, divine power is not the kind of true energy in novels that can be slowly restored through meditation. Divine power cannot be restored naturally. The only way to obtain divine power is the power of faith from core followers. The power of faith can be converted into divine power. There is no other way to restore divine power. In other words, if he used up his divine power before finding his core followers, then his path to becoming a god would be completely cut off. It would be fine if there were intelligent races in his kingdom of God, he could convince others to believe in him with his mouth, even if it was a bit harder. But here, facing a group of wild beasts and poisonous insects, no matter how eloquent he is, others will not understand what he is saying. The innate magical skill was like a stone sinking into the sea, and the dried bones did not react at all, which made Fang Cang's mind even more depressed. Is it because he died too long ago? Or is it because the bones are incomplete and cannot support the skills? Fang Cang thought about various possibilities. There was too little data now, so he couldn't analyze the specific problem. He also suspected that there was a problem with his method of use, which might be the main reason for the failure of the skill. This also made him realize that he should not just treat his innate magical skills as a skill. It is not okay to use it mindlessly according to the method of casting skills. The reality is not a game. There is no system behind it to help with calculations and analysis. He needs to figure out everything by himself. Fang Cang remembered what Niu Huan said at the beginning, that the acquired gods have the experience and knowledge of the previous life. He acted according to his own experience, but found that this experience was actually a shackle for him, and past experience solidified his thinking. Those innate gods will definitely not encounter this kind of problem. The innate spirit has the guidance of parents, and doing homework in advance can indeed help avoid many detours. After sorting out his thoughts, Fang Cang realized that he was not the kind of person who gave up easily. Born in a rural area in his previous life, he had no diploma or academic qualifications, but he rushed into the sales industry with passion. After several years of hard work, he rose from a small salesperson to a company executive. Not to mention the hardships involved, his inherent resilience also played a key role. Now that this has just begun, it is not enough for him to think of giving up. Even if his divine power is really exhausted, the worst that can happen is that he can go talk to the wild beasts about life. Can a living person be suffocated to death by himself? His divine sense swept over again and he found his next target, which was a grey wolf that had just died. This time the flesh and bones are quite complete, I wonder if they can play a role. He activated his innate magical skill once again, and the divine power was transformed into grey energy. However, this time he did not cast it on the corpse. Instead, he controlled the divine power and allowed it to circulate in his body. This is... Fang Cang's eyes were filled with surprise. Before, he had just released that energy without having time to feel anything. But this time, during its operation, he immediately felt the fluctuations from the power of the world. The dark aura that belonged unique to this world was lingering around him, attracted by the grey energy in his body. This discovery was like a ray of hope, which immediately opened up new ideas for him. Yes, the innate magical skills originally came from the kingdom of God and were the same source as the power of the world. Now they were just controlled by him in another way. He had used the innate magical skills as a skill before. In fact, it was a kind of power, a power that contained special rules. As for how to use it, it was entirely up to him. Thinking from this perspective, can more abilities be derived from this skill in the future? Can it be developed into a complete ability system? He needs to verify all these slowly. The core of this ability is the two words death and spirit. It is not as simple as just turning yourself into a necromancer. If he could just wave his hand and summon a group of little skeletons, then the quality of this god would be too low. The difference between them is like heaven and earth. The grey energy in the body is still circulating. After sorting out his thoughts, Fang Cang decides to call it the power of the dead. The power of the undead is to this world like a spark facing hay fuel. The power of the undead is just a fuse. Only when it is combined with fuel can it ignite a raging fire. Fang Cang's mind moved, and he mobilized a trace of undead power. Attracted, the vast power of heaven and earth gathered together, and soon formed a force that far exceeded the previous force. With a wave of his hand, all the power of the undead was injected into the corpse. Chapter 6. The problem of divine power has been solved. Using the power of the undead as a guide, he communicated with the power of heaven and earth. In this way, only a small amount of divine power needed to be consumed each time, which could sustain Fang Cang for a long time. And another surprise followed. The moment the power of the undead entered the body, the wolf corpse stood up tremblingly. Its grey pupils proved that it had long lost its life, but the power of the dead allowed it to move again. An invisible thread of faith spread out from the grey wolf and connected with Fang Cang. Although this belief is extremely weak, for him it is a qualitative change from nothing to something. Is this the benefit of creating your own followers? Compared to finding a tribe to develop faith, followers created through abilities are undoubtedly more advantageous, as they are born with absolute loyalty to the gods. Fang Cang's eyes revealed excitement. All this proved that his idea was correct. As long as he continued to follow this idea, he believed that the undead army in his memory would not be too far away from him. His divine sense gently stirred the line of faith, and Fang Cang gave the grey wolf an attack order. The grey wolf took a step and walked stiffly towards the crooked tree beside him. Stretch out your claws and strike. Snack. The sound was not loud, and a shallow mark appeared on the tree trunk. Isn't this attack a bit too weak? According to his perception, it was just an ordinary crooked tree, not one with particularly hard material, so the problem must be with the grey wolf. There are still many problems and a long way to go. Suppressing the excitement that had just arisen in his heart, Fang Cang had to start thinking again. Such fighting power is definitely not enough. The body is stiff and the movements are slow. Apart from its scary appearance, the resurrected grey wolf has no fighting power at all. If undead in this state were allowed to go onto the battlefield, no matter how many there were, they would never be enough to defeat others. Although the power of the undead is being used roughly at present, the general direction should be correct. The problem is most likely with the grey wolf. What on earth is the reason? Fang Cang frowned. For a moment he couldn't find the problem. He felt that the process was correct, but there was still something key missing. There is still too little information to refer to. Fortunately, the problem of divine power has been solved for the time being. He can conduct more experiments. He has to eat one bite at a time. In the flow of time in the kingdom of God, he has plenty of opportunities to adjust. If the most basic problems are not solved, how can he develop other abilities in the future? Time flies. Just when Fang Cang was full of enthusiasm and threw himself into the experiment again and again. In the square of the divine realm, nearly half of the sons of gods have successfully activated their talents, and divine patterns have appeared on their foreheads. At this time, only 1 hour had passed since the gods' descent ceremony, and everyone had already spent 4 days in the gods' realm. There was one thing Fang Cang had actually thought wrong. Among the innate gods born in the divine realm, most of their parents would not tell them too much about the kingdom of God. One reason is that everyone's kingdom of God is different, and one's own experience may not necessarily apply to their children. The second reason is that in the Son of God stage, they need to master too many things. This is an important period for laying the foundation. What they understand through their own understanding will be clearer and more profound, which is crucial for future development. Therefore, most spiritual parents will not tell their children too much at this stage, which can also be a way to see a person's potential in disguise. Kang Yang and Mo Zhang spread their spiritual thoughts and silently observed the situation of everyone. The divine patterns on Mo Chen and Kang Xiaoxiu's foreheads flickered, and it was obvious that they had already acquired divine talents. This made the two old fathers who were secretly observing heave a sigh of relief. After all, they were children of gods, so their talents could not be too bad. As true gods, the two old fathers would be embarrassed if their children performed too poorly. In a corner of the square, a man with a burly figure and long black hair standing upright appeared. Even with his eyes closed, his fierce aura could not be concealed. Suddenly, divine power spread around the man, and the divine power increased by several points in an instant. This change naturally attracted the attention of Kang Yang and the other man. They looked at the man, felt the changes in his body, and nodded. This increase in divine power is obviously not something that can be achieved by 1 or 2 followers. Well, either they created a large number of core followers, or they encountered an extremely suitable intelligent race and gained a lot of faith in a short period of time. They were so knowledgeable that they understood the key immediately. Whichever it is, it proves that he has good potential and is worth paying attention to. Kang Yang nodded, probed his mind into the bracelet, found the name list and checked it one by one. Soon the other party's information appeared in his field of vision. He cast his eyes to the name column, and a 2-character name caught his eye. Barbarian. Kang Yang used the bracelet to make a mark on the list, and the first name at the top of the list was Fang Cang. He was the first person among the 100,000 sons of God to activate the divine pattern. As the hosts of the God's descent ceremony, their job is not only to lead everyone into the God's realm, but also to observe and select those with potential in the process, which is also one of the key points. Those with higher talents will receive more resources and guidance, while those with ordinary talents can only rely on themselves and work hard. There are countless intersections on the road of growth for the gods, and each intersection will distance them from each other. Going further and further away. Divine power permeated the sky above the square. Even though each person's divine power is very weak, the power formed by 100,000 sons of gods gathered together is still not to be ignored. From time to time, someone would activate their talent, divine patterns would appear, and a few sons of God's divine power would float. It was obvious that they had some opportunities in their respective kingdoms of God. At this time, 2 hours had passed since the God's descent ceremony. It was the 8th day for the sons of God in the kingdom of God. Most of the sons of God had already activated the divine runes, and only a few were still motionless. For Kang Yang, these people are no longer worthy of attention. Although the future achievements of the Son of God do not only depend on the speed of activating talents, for the entire God clan, tens of millions of sons of God are promoted every year. If they do not show corresponding talents at the beginning, the probability of rising in the later stage will only be lower. If they want to get better treatment, they have to prove themselves first. If you can't stand out, who will care what you have done? Puff. One of the sons of God suddenly turned pale with an expression of pain. His divine power was consumed in an instant. His divine consciousness was also disconnected from the divine realm, and large mouthfuls of blood gushed out. Kang Yang and the other person instantly appeared in front of this man, enveloping him with their powerful divine thoughts and helping him stabilize his turbulent sea of consciousness. General Mo frowned and looked at the Son of God. The thing they were most worried about had happened. Chapter 7. The Kingdom of God is broken. General Mo looked at the Son of God in front of him. Kang Yang had helped him stabilize his sea of consciousness temporarily, but the injuries caused by the destruction of the Kingdom of God could not be recovered in a short time. If you want to rebuild the Kingdom of God, you can only do so after your injuries are fully recovered. Without special medication, this period of time will take at least 1 year. As an acquired God, he is helpless here and most likely no one will help him. He can only rely on himself to recover slowly. If he is lucky, he may be able to catch up with the God's descent ceremony next year. If he is unlucky, he will have to wait another year. Having lost their original Kingdom of God, their growth potential will be much worse, and their future achievements will become extremely limited. At this moment, his fate seems to be doomed. There are too many people in the divine world who have experienced the same thing. For them, their later development will mostly tend to do some logistical work, such as producing armor and weapons for their followers, or making some supplies for their followers. Only a few can rise up and fight again. Watching the Son of God being taken away, Kang Jiang's expression was somewhat deep. This situation actually happens countless times every year. In the place where God descends, there are not only sons of God from human civilization, but also sons of God from other civilizations. At this time of year, the number of sons of God in the land of God's descendants is at least over 70 or 80 million. Sometimes the number can even reach hundreds of millions. With this base number, it is very common for some divine kingdoms to be very close to each other. It is not bad if they meet in the same camp, at least there are civilized rules and they will not be wiped out. If they meet other civilizations, or if they are unlucky enough to meet some faster developing sons of God, the result will most likely be tragic. The situation of the Son of God just now was just the beginning. As time goes by, when the Kingdom of God develops to a certain scale, such situations will only become more and more frequent. That's when they will really get busy. There is nothing they can do to change this situation. This is the rule in the divine realm. Gods above the level of the Son of God cannot set foot in that star region. They can only go to support them after the sons of God light the divine fire and leave that area. That time will be the real test for the sons of God. When the sons of God can move freely in the divine realm, a full-scale war will break out. Kang Yang estimated that among this group of sons of God, perhaps not even half of them would be able to actually walk out. By then, a large number of sons of God's kingdoms would be shattered and they would be kicked out of the divine realm. This is also the first life and death test that all the sons of God need to go through. Divine Realm. Fang Cang was floating in the air, and beneath his feet were hundreds of skeleton beasts of various shapes. This was the 10th day since he came to the Kingdom of God. During these 10 days, he conducted a lot of experiments on the use of undead. After the first grey wolf corpse, he found several newly dead animal corpses. Without exception, each one was successfully awakened. This made him doubt whether he was controlling the undead or zombies. The gratifying yet sad thing is that every awakened animal was like the first grey wolf, moving slowly and stiffly, with no fighting power at all. Just when he was at a loss, a turning point appeared. On the morning of the second day after being awakened, the grey wolf's body had become completely stiff. Fang Cang clearly sensed through the line of faith that it was still alive, but completely unable to move. It was then that he suddenly realized that he seemed to have fallen into a misconception of thinking again. After a living thing dies, its body becomes rigid. The power of the undead gave them the ability to move in a special form, but there was no doubt that their bodies were dead. Their muscles, blood, cells, and internal organs had completely lost their activity. Rigidity was just an inevitable process. In this case, the body becomes a shackle that restricts their movements, trapping them here and making them unable to move. So Fang Cang tried to order other undead to attack the grey wolf. Amid the flying rotten flesh, the grey wolf's flesh and blood were peeled off, revealing the skeleton inside. The form of the power of death was truly revealed at this time. Inside the huge skeleton, a ball of grey energy boils and rolls in the head. Imperceptible grey threads spread out from the head, spread throughout the body, and flow through the bones, carrying the flesh and blood. This is the real reason why the grey wolf can move. Fang Cang once again gave the grey wolf an attack order. This time, without the restraint of flesh and blood, the grey wolf's speed returned to its normal state. With one leap, it knocked down a zombie. Its huge bone claws were swift and powerful, and it took away large pieces of flesh and blood with a wave. The grey wolf, having lost its flesh, is even faster than before. The ecosystem constructed entirely by the power of the undead has made it completely insensitive to pain, fearless, and tireless. The limit of its combat power depends only on whether its bones can bear it. This is what a real ghost should look like. At this moment, Fang Cang felt his whole body clear, and the feeling of satisfaction after breaking through the accumulated obstacles rushed straight to his mind. My whole body is numb. Thus, a team of undead was initially formed. This time Fang Cang didn't realize that he had taken a detour again. This was actually a process of accumulating experience and also a process of changing his way of thinking bit by bit. Normally he should not ignore such a common sense problem, but this fantasy world made him idealize everything and he took the use of his abilities too for granted. Facts have proved that the fantasy world also has to follow common sense and bringing it in mindlessly will only backfire. Next, Fang Cang did not rush to expand his bone squad, but continued to experiment on various forms of the undead. He found corpses in several different states and used the power of undeath. A half-body skeleton that has just died, a full-body skeleton that has been dead for a long time, a half-body skeleton that has been dead for a long time. Finally, there are living creatures that are dying but not yet dead. As a result, the experiment on the former went smoothly. According to his current method of casting, no matter how long the other party had been dead, he could successfully resurrect the other party after the power of the undead mixed with the power of the world entered the body. Even if only half of the opponent's body was left, he could still stand up. However, due to incomplete limbs, he was unable to form effective combat power. Fang Cang tried to reduce the number of bones again. When it was reduced to only 1/3, the power of the undead lost its effect. Fang Cang guessed that this was because the power of the undead needed bones to carry it, and too few bones could not bear enough power, so it failed. Based on this, it can be inferred that some animals that are too small are also unable to carry the power of the undead. There are also corpses that have been dead for a long time. Compared with those that have just died, it takes more energy to wake them up. Even if they are successfully awakened, their bones will become very brittle, which greatly reduces the value of their existence. It is a bit of a loss. The fantasy scene of standing in a mass grave and having thousands of corpses burst out of the ground with a wave of the hand can only be used as cannon fodder. No, maybe even cool. Chapter 8. Fang Cang's experiment is still going on. In his subsequent experiments on living creatures, he encountered repeated setbacks. No matter whether the person is dying or alive and well, as long as he is still alive, after the power of the undead enters the body, he will be in a very strange state. Their bodies are still alive, but they have lost all consciousness. Their state is more like that of a vegetable person in their previous life. Fang Cang didn't give up and continued to use his skills on them a few more times, but there was still no change. The introduction of innate divine skill, Necromancer says, it is an ability that can dominate the power of death, making the target alive in a dead state, or dead in a living state, a state between life and death. The phrase die in a living state seems to be consistent with the current situation based on its literal meaning. However, a living vegetative person has no meaning to him. He can't summon a group of vegetative people to fight. How to fight? Tire the enemy to death. Death is the innate magical skill bestowed upon him by the kingdom of God, and it contains the power to resurrect the dead, so Fang Cang feels that the actual situation should not be just this, but he really can't find a clue. The experiment got stuck at this point, and Fang Cang had no choice but to face reality. The experiment with the power of death came to an end. It's time to expand the team. Fang Cang looked at the test subjects in front of him and felt a little proud. Although the number of followers was not large at present, the gains during this period were still good. At least he had gained a lot of experience in the use of undead and was more adept at using them. Next, he decided to temporarily put strengthening his strength as the top priority. During this period of time, he was so absorbed in experiments that he almost forgot about his work. Fortunately, he was lucky and did not encounter any other divine kingdoms during this period. Otherwise, if he only relied on these few things, he would be at the mercy of others. In the forest, bursts of roars continued to be heard. The beasts here are cunning yet extremely ferocious. A giant black bear roared at the enemy in front of it. It was the king here and few creatures dared to provoke it. But now it encountered the enemy. They were a group of pale beasts of various shapes, with grey mist flowing in their empty eye sockets. The friction of bones caused by their movements made a rustling sound. They roared silently at the giant bear, without any fear in their eyes. At a certain moment, this group of pale beasts seemed to have received some kind of order, and they rushed towards the giant bear from all directions. The giant bear roared and stood up. On its 3-meter-tall body, hard hairs suddenly exploded like spikes. The huge bear paw, which was twice larger than the beast's head, swung towards the beast in front, and the sound of breaking through the air instantly demonstrated its power to the other beasts. Crack! The first beast that came into contact was instantly knocked away, and its body made of bones was torn into pieces in the air. After knocking down several beasts, the beast with only half of its body left stood up again, as if it felt no pain, and let out a silent roar at the giant bear. Grey gas faintly flowed through its cracked head. More beasts climbed onto the giant bear's body. They used their claws and teeth to tear at the giant bear. Even if it was shattered by a palm strike the next moment, they would take away a large piece of flesh and blood before breaking. These are the undead, a group of killing machines that know no fear. Similar things were happening simultaneously in different parts of the forest. The two black panthers moved flexibly on the tree. They wanted to use their advantage of being able to climb trees to fight guerrilla warfare with the undead. Unexpectedly, more undeads jumped up from the ground and surrounded the Black Panther in the tree. Hundreds of jackals surrounded and killed a dozen undead. In just a moment, these undead were torn into pieces. The jackals were about to howl to the sky, venting their joy of victory. The ground was shaking suddenly, the sound of bones rubbing against each other became one, and countless pale undead souls spread across the forest. Day 20 of the Kingdom of God. Nearly 10,000 lines of faith are connected to Fang Cang. The undead are worthy of being called the 4 great natural disasters. This snowball advantage is fully utilized in large-scale battles. They have no sense of pain and no fear, as if they were born only to kill. During these days, Fang Cang commanded the undead to continuously slaughter the living beings here. Occasionally, he would try to give some detailed commands to the undead, such as encirclement, roaming and other tactics. Although the effect was average, he enjoyed it. But what he liked most was to crush them with absolute numbers, watching the army of bones sweeping past like a swarm of locusts. Needless to say, that was a sense of accomplishment. He knew that he was not cut out for commanding battles, and the nature of the undead did not require him to do too much. How could he lose if he fought more and more of them? There are now more than 9,000 undead under his control, and these undead provide him with a large amount of divine power every day. However, this was not consistent with what he had seen in the data. Theoretically, the power of faith provided by nearly 10,000 followers should far exceed what he had obtained now. He did not know if it was because they had no wisdom. Although the undead were absolutely loyal to him, he felt that what he had obtained now was not even 1% of what was stated in the data. As for this situation, we can only figure it out when we have a chance to create intelligent undead in the future. Fortunately, the divine power is enough for the time being. In addition, he made another new discovery. As the undead army slaughtered living beings, he discovered that a black aura emanated from every dead animal. This black aura was very subtle, and he did not notice it at first, but as more and more animals were killed, he finally noticed this situation. He then began to conduct targeted research on this aura. During his research, he discovered that this breath would appear when all living things died, including various plants and even insects and ants. However, the weaker the life, the more obscure the breath is. He confirmed this only after countless observations. Afterwards, he used divine power and the power of death to analyze this breath respectively. When he was operating the divine power, this breath did not exist. And when he switched to the power of the undead, he could indeed feel the breath. Fang Cang guessed that this aura was unique to this world, or it might also exist in other worlds, but it could only be touched by using the power of the undead. In his perception, this breath was full of the taste of death, which was very similar to the power of the world here. When he used the power of the undead to wrap up this breath and cast it on the dead beasts, the power of the undead could still be effective. This discovery instantly made him figure out a previous problem. Why does awakening a beast that has been dead for a long time consume more necromancy power than one that has just died? The answer lies here. The attribute source of the world's power is likely to come from here. The aura in the bodies of those wild beasts that have just died has not had time to dissipate, so using skills on them at this time will of course consume less energy. This discovery gave him more speculations about the power of the undead. He even gave this breath a name. Just call it, Dead Air. Chapter 9. Different attributes of the Kingdom of God will give birth to different core followers. The discovery of death energy undoubtedly deepened Fang Cang's understanding of this world. Since he had never been to other people's kingdoms of God, he didn't know whether the death energy was unique to this world, but there was no doubt that if the undead wanted to play a role, they could not do without the death energy, which made him feel more sense of crisis. If a battle takes place in the future and there is no death energy in the opponent's kingdom of God, then the impact on him will be very great. No death energy means that he cannot summon the undead, and in that case, half of his advantage will disappear. He didn't dare to gamble. Once he lost, he might face the destruction of the kingdom of God, so he had to prepare in advance. The only solution he could think of at the moment was to speed up the integration process of the kingdom of God. When a battle broke out, he could mobilize more death energy from the kingdom of God. That way, he could at least maintain the advantage of the undead. As for the consumed death energy, he would find a way to replenish it in the future. As the killing continued, his divine power grew steadily. Compared to the methods used by other sons of God to spread their faith, his method was undoubtedly simpler and more brutal. He just had to keep fighting and transform all kinds of creatures into undead. Although there are many limitations, there is currently no better way. The process of increasing faith is actually the process of establishing the kingdom of God. When his power of faith reaches a certain level, he can ignite the divine fire and completely merge with the kingdom of God. Currently, Fang Cang has only 10,000 followers. In his perception, the progress of the integration with the kingdom of God is less than 1%, and this process is long. The Son of God needs to gain the recognition of the kingdom of God. The higher the recognition, the more power the Son of God can draw on from the kingdom of God. Now he can only mobilize a small amount of world power. When he integrates his divine consciousness into the kingdom of God, his perception of the surroundings of the kingdom of God is also extremely limited. Fang Cang has been in a state of distraction during this period, ordering the undead to continue hunting while observing the situation around the kingdom of God. If he encounters other sons of God, he will immediately activate the emergency plan, which is the gift he prepared for the invaders. Green is a newborn son of God from the Tart civilization. As a congenital god, he has had a smooth life since birth. His parents were both gods, and although their power was modest, they had great power in their work, and they were the inspectors of hundreds of mortal planets. The promotion mechanism for gods in the Tart civilization is different from that in human civilization. Every year, inspectors from various regions will personally select the best from mortal planets. After being baptized by the power of the world, some of these admitted Tarts will awaken their divine power and be promoted to sons of God. Although the probability of promotion is not very high, due to the large base, the number of new sons of God each year is no less than that of other civilizations. This has led to the managers of some planets demanding everything from inspectors. As the son of the inspector, Green has lived a godlike life since he was a child. He can decide the life and death of those mortals with just a few words. He looked down on those acquired gods from the bottom of his heart. God knows how many times these mortals had been toyed with by them before they were promoted. Now they are just lucky enough to have obtained the identity of gods. How can such people be compared with them? They, the innate gods, are the real gods. Of course, compared to these acquired gods, he looked down upon the gods of foreign races even more. Although the other party was very powerful, in his eyes they were nothing more than evil gods with great power. Only the gods of his Tet tribe were truly orthodox. Green activated his talent on the 4th day in the kingdom of God. This speed is already above average in civilization. If his parents knew about it, they would definitely reward him with an affiliated planet. Although those mortals are inferior, those Tate women know how to have fun. These people would try every possible way to please him. Every time he came to a satellite planet, he was unwilling to go back. If it weren't for his parents' strict requirements, he would even want to move his residence there directly. Thinking of this, he became excited again. He decided to have a good talk with his parents when he returned. This time he wanted 2 planets. Green has been having a very comfortable life recently. He turned his eyes to the beauty beside him, who was his core dependent. He was lucky as his core dependents were a kind of frogmen. After he displayed his innate magical skill totem, he easily gained a lot of faith. The effect of the totem also gave his dependents considerable combat power. This race can fight amphibiously on land and in water, and is an intelligent race. This allows his power of faith to grow rapidly. In the 1 month since he came to the kingdom of God, his core followers have grown to more than 50,000. The frogmen have a particularly large population base, and the number of his followers is far from reaching the limit. Compared with other sons of God who need a lot of time to reproduce slowly, he undoubtedly has a huge advantage in the early stage. He believed that few people of the same level could compete with him, which made him somewhat envious of those who had encountered the Divine Kingdom War in the early stages. If someone was unlucky enough to encounter him. Hey! Thick tentacles wrapped around several of his followers. In his eyes, these were exotic beauties, and he decided to bestow God's blessings on them. Just as he was about to show his greatness, a planet suddenly broke into his perception. It was a grey planet. The entire planet was shrouded in a layer of dark fog, with a trace of divine power flowing on its surface. It was obvious that a son of God had descended on this planet. God's kingdom. Green stood up excitedly, with several thick tentacles supporting his body. Obviously, this is a kingdom belonging to a certain son of God. The other party's divine power is average and he seems to have not discovered him yet. Green's eyes lit up and he pushed the frogman beside him away. Compared to beautiful women, he was more eager to fight on the battlefield. The consciousness body turned into a ball of light suspended in the air. The divine thought moved the thread of faith, and the 50,000 frogmen instantly felt it. My followers, the evil god is approaching our world. To protect our loved ones and our homes, take up your weapons and follow me to conquer. The vast divine thought turned into a magnificent voice that resounded in the hearts of every frogman, and Green made pre-war mobilization according to the methods taught by his parents. Among these 50,000 frogmen, except for less than 10,000 old, weak, sick, and disabled ones, the rest can participate in the battle. It can be said that everyone is a soldier. Now there are as many as 40,000 frogmen who can participate in the battle. As Green finished his words, he waved his hand and released divine power. The frogs nourished by the divine power instantly felt their spirits become fuller. Tens of thousands of frogmen gathered from different directions. Some of them held animal bones, some held knives and forks, and more frogmen were empty-handed and had no weapons. However, every frogman was restless at the call of the gods. God has issued an order, God needs them. Come with me, and kill the evil god. Kill the evil god. Kill the evil god. The uniform voices were inspiring and exciting. Chapter 10. 40,000 frogmen gathered together, waiting for the order from the gods. As the 2 divine kingdoms got closer and closer, the grey planet became clearer in Green's perception. But the other party seemed to have not discovered him yet. Are you too weak, or have you given up resistance? Green was a little confused. Normally, when encountering an invasion, the Son of God could use divine power to strengthen the defense of the kingdom of God. In this case, the invading party would need to consume more divine power to break through the defense, and the other party still had not made any response until this time. He couldn't help but wonder if there was some conspiracy. What conspiracy could there be? I can't figure it out. No matter what conspiracy you have, it is useless in the face of absolute strength. Only the weak use conspiracies and tricks, the strong use force to suppress others. Green is very confident in himself. It's not that there are no stronger ones than him among the sons of God, but when a strong person encounters the kingdom of God, he will generally choose to take the initiative to attack. If the strength is sufficient, no one is willing to put the battlefield in his own kingdom of God. In that case, even if the battle is won, the environment of the kingdom of God will suffer great damage, and it will take more resources to repair it in the future. It was obvious from the opponent's performance that he was not that powerful son of God. Green felt a little relieved. Just in case, he decided to fight quickly. The 2 planets were moving along their own trajectories. Just as they were about to cross each other, a huge bridge made of divine power stretched out from Green's kingdom of God and suddenly connected to the grey planet. The 2 planets, affected by the divine power, broke away from their original trajectories and began to move forward side by side. The moment the divine power channel was connected, 30,000 frogmen howled and rushed towards the channel in a mighty force. Green specially reserved 10,000 frogmen to guard in his own kingdom of God in case the other party became desperate and took the opportunity to steal his home secretly. At this time, 30,000 frogmen had already poured into the divine power channel. After a brief feeling of weightlessness, the frogmen finally set foot on this grey planet. Green turned into a ball of light and floated out of the passage. In an instant, a dark and decayed breath rushed into his perception. The sky here is grey and thick fog covers the entire world. Unknown animal bones are buried in the swamps, and even the river reflects a black color, obviously having been polluted for a long time. Ah, this. Green was a little confused. He didn't expect that the other party's kingdom of God was such a world. Are there any resources worth plundering in such a world? The answer is obviously yes. He can plunder the other party's land to increase the area of his own kingdom, or he can capture the wild beasts here as food for his followers, but these must be purified before they can be used, which requires additional resources. This kind of divine kingdom environment is obviously not suitable for his family to live in. It seems a bit useless to him. The only valuable things may be some mineral veins here. Of course, there is also the most important world power. During the invasion, the world power of the two kingdoms of God will blend with each other. Killing the creatures here is also a way to plunder the world power. The more the other party's followers die, the faster the world power will be plundered. Evil god of the alien race, come out and see me. After just a moment's thought, Green had made a decision. Since the invasion had already begun, he could not return empty-handed no matter what. His followers had just established their faith in him, and their belief in him was not strong enough. He had to consolidate his faith through a victory. The deliberately created grand sound echoed in the kingdom of God, causing some commotion among the frogmen gathered at the entrance of the passage. A tall male frogman was talking with his companion next to him. Our gods must be very powerful. Yes, yes. Quack. The short frogman nodded, his face full of admiration. Will the evil god surrender directly? Yes, yes. Quack. Then we don't have to fight. Yes, yes. Quack. Green didn't care about the frogmen's discussions. A figure had emerged in his sight. It turned out to be a human. He felt a little disdainful in his heart. Cowardice and cunning were synonymous with human beings. As a member of the brave and warlike Tet tribe, he despised these cowardly humans the most. Human evil god, tell me your name, and the great frog master will forgive your rudeness. The scene was somewhat quiet. The other party did not answer, but looked at him strangely. The look was like looking at a fool. Green felt humiliated instantly, and a surge of anger rushed to his head. He tried his best to control himself and did not curse. After all, his family members were still watching him. Taking a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart, Green spoke again. Human evil god, since you are so ungrateful, don't blame me for being ruthless. Summon your followers and let me show you how powerful my frog tribe is. You talk too much bullshit. If you want to fight me, then fight me. If not, get out of here. The sound echoed between heaven and earth, and was clearly heard by every frogman. After leaving these words, the human figure disappeared. Only the confused frogmen and their gods were left in the passage. Green could no longer suppress his anger. Veins on his head bulged and he spoke word by word through his teeth. Kill all the creatures here. Don't leave anyone behind. The manic divine thoughts swept out and were transmitted to every frogman through the line of faith. Feeling the wrath from the gods, 30,000 frogmen rushed into the fog with black roars. Fang Cang, who was hiding on the side, looked at the octopus man in silence. Are all the alien gods so immature? Such shameful lines came out of their mouths. Fortunately, his undead are all absolutely loyal, so he doesn't need to worry about maintaining his image. In fact, he sensed it the moment the other party's kingdom of God appeared. The reason why he did not react was because he suddenly had some ideas. He used this time to make arrangements in the kingdom of God. In fact, his current state is not very suitable for fighting. According to his plan, the real time for the rise of the undead is after the divine fire is ignited. At that time, when the undead have accumulated to a certain number and truly formed a sea of undead bones, that is when he will sweep across the divine realm. But since he has met him, he should find a way to defeat him. This is a good opportunity to verify some things. Maybe this is also an opportunity for him. Brother, why can't we see any enemies after walking for so long? Hush, the enemy might be hiding somewhere, ready to attack us by surprise, don't relax. Wagwa is a young frogman. This time, he and his brother Wagwa responded to the call of God and came to the world of evil gods. After receiving the order to attack, they followed the main force into the fog, but they had not encountered a single enemy all the way until now. Wagwa and his brother were on high alert. The air here was very humid, and some mosquitoes flew past their eyes from time to time. Out of instinct, Wagwa stretched out his long tongue and rolled a bug into his mouth. He swallowed it whole before he could taste it. Just a snack. From time to time, roars of beasts could be heard from the fog in the distance, but due to the obstruction of the fog they could not see what was happening over there. The beast's roar was intermittent, and it didn't sound like it had encountered a large force. Crack! An exposed dry bone was accidentally stepped on and broken. The two frogs didn't care about it. There were bones like this everywhere along the way. They were a little scared when they first saw them, but after seeing them more often, they got used to it. Just bones. Can you still jump up and hit me? Chapter 10. 40,000 frogmen gathered together, waiting for the order from the gods. As the two divine kingdoms got closer and closer, the grey planet became clearer in Green's perception. But the other party seemed to have not discovered him yet. Are you too weak, or have you given up resistance? Green was a little confused. Normally, when encountering an invasion, the Son of God could use divine power to strengthen the defense of the kingdom of God. In this case, the invading party would need to consume more divine power to break through the defense, and the other party still had not made any response until this time. He couldn't help but wonder if there was some conspiracy. What conspiracy could there be? I can't figure it out. No matter what conspiracy you have, it is useless in the face of absolute strength. Only the weak use conspiracies and tricks, the strong use force to suppress others. Green is very confident in himself. It's not that there are no stronger ones than him among the sons of God, but when a strong person encounters the kingdom of God, he will generally choose to take the initiative to attack. If the strength is sufficient, no one is willing to put the battlefield in his own kingdom of God. In that case, even if the battle is won, the environment of the kingdom of God will suffer great damage, and it will take more resources to repair it in the future. It was obvious from the opponent's performance that he was not that powerful son of God. Green felt a little relieved. Just in case, he decided to fight quickly. The two planets were moving along their own trajectories. Just as they were about to cross each other, a huge bridge made of divine power stretched out from Green's kingdom of God and suddenly connected to the grey planet. The two planets, affected by the divine power, broke away from their original trajectories and began to move forward side by side. The moment the divine power channel was connected, 30,000 frogmen howled and rushed towards the channel in a mighty force. Green specially reserved 10,000 frogmen to guard in his own kingdom of God in case the other party became desperate and took the opportunity to steal his home secretly. At this time, 30,000 frogmen had already poured into the divine power channel. After a brief feeling of weightlessness, the frogmen finally set foot on this grey planet. Green turned into a ball of light and floated out of the passage. In an instant, a dark and decayed breath rushed into his perception. The sky here is grey and thick fog covers the entire world. Unknown animal bones are buried in the swamps, and even the river reflects a black color, obviously having been polluted for a long time. This. Green was a little confused. He didn't expect that the other party's kingdom of God was such a world. Are there any resources worth plundering in such a world? The answer is obviously yes. He can plunder the other party's land to increase the area of his own kingdom, or he can capture the wild beasts here as food for his followers, but these must be purified before they can be used, which requires additional resources. This kind of divine kingdom environment is obviously not suitable for his family to live in. It seems a bit useless to him. The only valuable things may be some mineral veins here. Of course, there is also the most important world power. During the invasion, the world power of the two kingdoms of God will blend with each other. Killing the creatures here is also a way to plunder the world power. The more the other party's followers die, the faster the world power will be plundered. Evil god of the alien race, come out and see me. After just a moment's thought, Green had made a decision. Since the invasion had already begun, he could not return empty-handed no matter what. His followers had just established their faith in him, and their belief in him was not strong enough. He had to consolidate his faith through a victory. The deliberately created grand sound echoed in the kingdom of God, causing some commotion among the frogmen gathered at the entrance of the passage. A tall male frogman was talking with his companion next to him. Our gods must be very powerful. Yes, yes. Quack. The short frogman nodded, his face full of admiration. Will the evil god surrender directly? Yes, yes. Quack. Then we don't have to fight. Yes, yes. Quack. Green didn't care about the frogman's discussions. A figure had emerged in his sight. It turned out to be a human. He felt a little disdainful in his heart. Cowardice and cunning were synonymous with human beings. As a member of the brave and warlike Tat tribe, he despised these cowardly humans the most. Human evil god, tell me your name, and the great frog master will forgive your rudeness. The scene was somewhat quiet. The other party did not answer, but looked at him strangely. The look was like looking at a fool. Green felt humiliated instantly, and a surge of anger rushed to his head. He tried his best to control himself and did not curse. After all, his family members were still watching him. Taking a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart, Green spoke again. Human evil god, since you are so ungrateful, don't blame me for being ruthless. Summon your followers and let me show you how powerful my frog tribe is. You talk too much bullshit. If you want to fight me, then fight me. If not, get out of here. The sound echoed between heaven and earth, and was clearly heard by every frogman. After leaving these words, the human figure disappeared. Only the confused frogmen and their gods were left in the passage. Green could no longer suppress his anger. Veins on his head bulged and he spoke word by word through his teeth. Kill all the creatures here. Don't leave anyone behind. The manic divine thoughts swept out and were transmitted to every frogman through the line of faith. Feeling the wrath from the gods, 30,000 frogmen rushed into the fog with black roars. Fang Cang, who was hiding on the side, looked at the octopus man in silence. Are all the alien gods so immature? Such shameful lines came out of their mouths. Fortunately, his undead are all absolutely loyal, so he doesn't need to worry about maintaining his image. In fact, he sensed it the moment the other party's kingdom of God appeared. The reason why he did not react was because he suddenly had some ideas. He used this time to make arrangements in the kingdom of God. In fact, his current state is not very suitable for fighting. According to his plan, the real time for the rise of the undead is after the divine fire is ignited. At that time, when the undead have accumulated to a certain number and truly formed a sea of undead bones, that is when he will sweep across the divine realm. But since he has met him, he should find a way to defeat him. This is a good opportunity to verify some things. Maybe this is also an opportunity for him. Brother, why can't we see any enemies after walking for so long? Hush, the enemy might be hiding somewhere, ready to attack us by surprise, don't relax. Wagwa is a young frogman. This time, he and his brother Wagwa responded to the call of God and came to the world of evil gods. After receiving the order to attack, they followed the main force into the fog, but they had not encountered a single enemy all the way until now. Wagwa and his brother were on high alert. The air here was very humid, and some mosquitoes flew past their eyes from time to time. Out of instinct, Wagwa stretched out his long tongue and rolled a bug into his mouth. He swallowed it whole before he could taste it. Just a snack. From time to time, roars of beasts could be heard from the fog in the distance, but due to the obstruction of the fog they could not see what was happening over there. The beast's roar was intermittent, and it didn't sound like it had encountered a large force. Crack! An exposed dry bone was accidentally stepped on and broken. The two frogs didn't care about it. There were bones like this everywhere along the way. They were a little scared when they first saw them, but after seeing them more often, they got used to it. Just bones. Can you still jump up and hit me? Chapter 12. A white wave swept in, and countless frogmen were swept into the wave and disappeared. Some frogmen who were closer to the passage had already rushed in. Now they just wanted to go home and hide, as if this would allow them to escape the fate of being killed. In the divine realm, two planets move side by side, connected by a divine power channel. Suddenly, a passage stretched out from the grey planet again and connected with another planet with a bang. The two channels merged together, doubling the size of the original channel. The earth was shaking, and the sounds of countless undead running gathered together and echoed over the kingdom of God. As they got closer and closer to the channel, the undead army accelerated again and rushed into the divine power channel without hesitation. On the other side, in Green's kingdom of God, 30,000 frogmen were ready for battle. Knowing that the other side would not let him go, Green gathered all the frogmen here. There were originally 10,000 people left here from the kingdom of God, and he mobilized the old, the weak, women and children here. Together with the nearly 10,000 who escaped from the opposite side, he barely made up the number of 30,000. Looking at the uneven army of 30,000, Green still held a glimmer of hope in his heart. What if I win? The other side must have lost quite a few followers in the battle. Even if we lose, we must make that despicable human pay the price. Green was furious. In fact, these 30,000 troops now have no fighting spirit at all. He knows very well in his heart that all this is just the last struggle. My people, unfortunately, our warriors have all died at the hands of the evil gods, and now the evil gods are about to invade our homes. They will kill your loved ones, burn your houses, and destroy your homes. Now, you are the last hope of the frogmen. Take up arms to defend our homeland. Even if you die, you must bite off a piece of their flesh. Fight for our fallen warriors, my people. Amid the roar, the undead army rushed out of the passage. Although the frogmen were terrified in their hearts, they still howled and rushed towards the undead under the influence of the general trend. As the distance got closer, some frogmen who had never seen the undead finally saw their appearance clearly. Pale skeletons, cold ghost fire, and some of the undead even had remnants of flesh and blood hanging on their bodies. They even saw frogmen among the undead ranks. They were the companions who once fought alongside them, but now they had become disabled and were staggering while wielding the butcher knife at them. Devil! Someone screamed, and the entire frogman team gradually slowed down. More and more frogmen saw the situation on the other side clearly. They had already lost their fighting spirit, and when faced with such a horrific scene, the string in their hearts broke. Devil! Howling sounds came one after another. They firmly believed that they had encountered a devil. Countless frogmen no longer had the will to fight and wanted to retreat with fear on their faces. However, the frogmen who were rushing forward were unable to break in time, and suddenly, the entire frogman army was in chaos. Crying, howling, running away. The 30,000 frogmen were defeated before they even came into contact with the enemy. The undead on the other side didn't care about that. Without receiving any orders from God, all they had in mind was killing. After a moment, the families of both sides collided with each other with a loud bang. In the dust, screams were heard continuously. Green looked ashen. The following battle was a one-sided scene. The undead attacked the defenseless frogmen without mercy. By the time Fang Cang called a halt, there were less than 10,000 frogmen left alive. Some of the undead were separated to take these frogmen back to the kingdom of God as captives, and the rest of the undead began to spread out throughout the kingdom of God in groups of 100. The octopus man has disappeared. Fang Cang estimated that he might have fainted. The death of so many of his followers had a huge impact on his consciousness. Now he just had to wait for the power of the world to be absorbed. Then his kingdom of God would be completely shattered and his consciousness would be kicked out of the divine realm. In front of the passage to the kingdom of God, Fang Cang appeared on the battlefield just now. In front of him was a ground full of frogman corpses. Their blood had already seeped into the soil, dyeing a large area of land red. Faced with this hellish scene, Fang Cang felt no wavering at all. Maybe it was because he was born careless or for some other reason, but he didn't feel the slightest bit moved when facing these alien races. His mind was full of thoughts about undeads. In his eyes, this area was filled with grey mist. That's dead air. 20,000 frogmen died here, plus some undead souls shattered in the battle. The air filled with deathly aura had begun to spread around. This scene was undoubtedly a beautiful one for Fang Cang. This proves that death energy does exist in every world. As long as a living being dies, death energy will escape. The undead simply gave him the ability to contact and control this power. The sense of crisis that had lingered in my heart before disappeared without a trace with this discovery. In other people's kingdom of God, his undead can still maintain his advantage. The reason why this battle went so smoothly, in addition to the advantage of fighting at home, was also related to his arrangements. He arranged the undead in the kingdom of God in advance, disguised as corpses. He was betting that the other party could not see the grey aura in the undead's body. Because in his experiments, when he no longer used the power of the dead, the undead looked like an ordinary skeleton in his eyes. Apart from the fact that they could move, there was nothing special about them. This phenomenon made him guess that the undead should also appear in this way to other people, unless the other party also possessed special powers similar to the power of the dead. Another important reason that determined the direction of the battle was that he launched the emergency plan. The so-called emergency plan is those old corpses that he despises. Well, it's the kind of corpse that has been dead for a long time. Their bones are very brittle and many of them are no longer intact, but they are numerous. Under the control of the power of the undead, their attacks are not bad at all. Even if their bodies are broken apart by one blow, they can still play a certain role. When Fang Cang realized that he might lose his home advantage in the future, he had been thinking of ways to deal with it. In addition to speeding up the integration of the world's power, using these old corpses as a reserve army is the best solution he can think of. Currently in his kingdom of God, after years of accumulation, these corpses can be said to be everywhere. There were too many animals that reproduced and died here, and after careful selection, he only used a small part of them. If his divine power was not insufficient, he could have summoned more undead. Are you afraid if I can gather an army of 100,000 undead with a wave of my hand? Therefore, the final result was that the undead all over the mountains completely intimidated the opponent. In fact, a large part of them were fakes. His real army of bones was actually less than 30,000. This time, they had come out in full force. End of chapter 13. Looking at the corpses all over the ground, Fang Cang was not in a hurry to convert them into undead. He is thinking about something. When the undead army was fighting in the enemy's kingdom, the death energy in their bodies was continuously consumed. This made him realize that the undead also needed to replenish energy, but there was usually deathly energy everywhere in the kingdom of God, so he didn't notice it. If he needs to fight in the opponent's kingdom of God for a long time in the future, this phenomenon is likely to have a fatal impact on him. Fang Cang looked at the death energy that had spread far away and thought silently. After all, the method of obtaining death energy by killing is too slow. If there is a way to store the death energy in the kingdom of God, and then release it into the opponent's kingdom of God during battle. Does that mean it's like playing at home? If you are bolder, and fill the opponent's entire kingdom with death energy, then when the war starts, you can directly send troops to the opponent's home. As soon as this idea came out, it was unstoppable. Fang Cang silently thought about the feasibility of it, while directing the undead to temporarily move the corpses here back to the kingdom of God. There are enough undead for now, and there is no need to waste divine power to resurrect them now. He still has some experiments that require these corpses. There are currently more than 50,000 undead active in the Green Kingdom. When the large forces of the frogmen are wiped out, each group of 100 is enough to deal with most situations. If they encounter a more powerful biological group, under Fang Cang's command, the nearby undead will also go to support as quickly as possible. During the advancement, Fang Cang did not kill all the creatures. Some creatures with weak resistance consciousness entered Fang Cang's kingdom of God under the conscious driving of the undead. Only some stubborn ones would be eliminated, and their bodies would still be brought back to the kingdom of God. In this way, tens of thousands of undead souls performed their functions like parts, and under Fang Cang's coordination, they operated in an orderly manner like a precision machine. A large number of creatures were brought back to the kingdom of God, expanding the ecosystem in the kingdom of God. Fang Cang specially set aside an area in the kingdom of God to let them adapt to the environment there first. This was something Fang Cang had carefully considered during the battle. The development of the kingdom of God does not happen overnight. Although his undead only need a large number of corpses to grow rapidly, what about the future? If one day there are no other creatures in his kingdom except the dead, who will provide the death energy? This battle made him realize many problems that he had previously overlooked. Reality is not a novel, nor a game. There is no system that will provide him with resources. He needs to plan everything himself, and he can only rely on himself. There is no doubt that he must make a long-term plan for himself, and raising some animals in captivity is one of the parts of this plan. The mopping up operation lasted for 3 full days. In fact, if they just wanted to kill all the creatures here, it wouldn't take that long. However, Fang Cang wanted to capture the creatures here and also wanted their corpses, so these tasks took up a lot of time. There was no way. Most of his undead were transformed from various wild beasts, so some things were indeed not very convenient to do. Only a small number of humanoid undead were recently transformed from frogmen, and they undertook the main transportation work. It is worth mentioning that during the raid, he discovered many wild frogmen. These frogmen lived together in the form of families, ranging from dozens to hundreds, and did not pose much threat to the undead. Fang Cang guessed that they were all followers that Green had not had time to recover, which allowed them to escape. Frogmen are an intelligent race. Faced with the absolute strength of the undead army, they surrendered easily and became part of the frogmen's captives. At this point, this encounter has come to an end. As the last undead returned to the kingdom of God, Fang Cang withdrew the divine power channel. Without the support of divine power, Green's kingdom of God, which had exhausted the world's power a few days ago, collapsed. The entire planet of the divine kingdom turned into countless fragments and drifted towards the depths of the divine realm. Fang Cang stood in his own kingdom of God, quietly observing this scene with his mind. It would be a lie to say that I didn't feel anything. Before the coming of the Son of God, these divine planets had actually existed for an unknown period of time, with all kinds of creatures multiplying and living on them, passed down from generation to generation to the present day. The appearance of the Son of God brings hope for the growth of these planets, but it may also bring destruction. But whether it is life or death, this is just the law of this world. There is no absolute right or wrong. People are trying their best to plunder resources to strengthen themselves. Aren't these planets the same? Now, after absorbing the world power of an entire kingdom of God, Fang Cang's kingdom of God has quietly undergone many changes. The first and most obvious change is the area of the kingdom of God. The kingdom of all the sons of God was only 10,000 square kilometers at the beginning, but now, the area of his kingdom has skyrocketed to 15,000 square kilometers, an increase of exactly half. The role of world power is of course not just to increase the area. More abundant world power will also feed back to the creatures living in it. All creatures in the kingdom of God, including the undead, have been slightly strengthened. The extent of this strengthening is not very large, but Fang Cang believes that as long as the strengthening continues, a qualitative change will occur sooner or later. The grey power of the dead flowed in his hands, and Fang Cang quietly felt the changes in it. After the power of the world was strengthened, his innate magical skills also gained a certain degree of enhancement. He can now mobilize more death energy with the same amount of undead power, which means that he can convert more undead at one time. He roughly estimated in his mind that if there were enough corpses and death energy, he could now summon about 1,000 undead at a time. This would be far from enough for future battles involving tens of thousands or even hundreds of millions of undead, but at least his work would be easier in his daily life. Before this, he had only been able to summon more than 300 undead at most at a time. Due to the lack of divine power at the time, he did not exert his full strength. But even if he exerted his full strength, he estimated that the maximum number would be 500, so this improvement was no small matter. In addition, the operation of the power of death has become smoother. Fang Cang doesn't know if it is an illusion, but he feels that the color of the power of death is a little darker. There is only a slight difference, but Fang Cang believes that his feeling is correct. Perhaps the power of the dead can evolve again in the future. Who knows, what new abilities will it have then? Chapter 14. The Divine World. The square was filled with divine power, and from time to time someone would suddenly experience a surge in divine power. It was already the 10th hour after God's descent, which meant that everyone in God's realm had already spent 41 days. After more than a month of development, some sons of God have also ushered in a period of explosive growth for their core followers. The continuous fluctuations of divine power in the square are the best proof of this. There are also some sons of gods whose divine consciousness suddenly surges, which means that their kingdom of God has gained enormous world power. These are all victories in encounters with other divine kingdoms. Kang Yang made special note of these sons of gods whose divine powers surged. There was no other reason for this. This surge in divine powers would only occur when they encountered alien civilizations and won a life and death battle. If they encounter a human son of God, there is a minimum guarantee. Even if they win at this stage, they cannot obtain too much world power. On the contrary, in these 10 hours, the number of sons of God whose kingdom was shattered has exceeded 3 digits. In the early days, since each kingdom of God had not yet developed much, some sons of God would not choose to attack even if they met. As time went on, the encounters between the kingdoms of God were about to enter a period of outbreak. Kang Yang silently observed the situation in the square, taking out his bracelet from time to time to make records. At the same time, a ray of divine consciousness always surrounded Kang Xiaoxiao in the corner. He could handle all matters related to these 100,000 people calmly, but he was worried about his own daughter. As a father, he was eager to know his daughter's current situation, but he knew that his daughter could not be disturbed now, which made him start to think wildly. If his daughter ever encounters the Son of God from another civilization, the destruction of the kingdom of God is secondary. As a true God, he has plenty of ways to help his daughter recover quickly. But if the original kingdom of God is lost, it will be very detrimental to her future development. If you are worried, just wake her up and ask her. At least we can find out her divine attributes and the situation of her family. General Mo at the side saw that Kang Yang was uneasy and suggested. After hearing this, Kang Yang did not answer, but just shook his head. In fact, waking up Kang Xiaoxiao now would not affect anything. It would just be a simple inquiry about the situation, but he was unwilling to make an exception. The entire process of the God's descent ceremony needs to last a whole day. This is the time when the Son of God is most focused after arriving in the Kingdom of God. It is also the most important time for the development of the Kingdom of God. The true God is responsible for guarding and recording, as well as handling some emergency situations. Afterwards, they will be taken to a specific residence, where a professional team will be responsible for taking care of the daily life of each Son of God. This process will continue until they ignite the divine fire or the Kingdom of God is destroyed. As mankind has developed to this day and has become one of the top civilizations in the divine world, its strength can be seen in all aspects. This series of arrangements also represents the importance that human civilization places on the sons of God, which is the most important stage in laying the foundation for every god. With the support of 108 God-King planets and countless subsidiary planets, it is very easy to train more than 10 million sons of God with the strength of the entire clan. Of course, the efforts are not without rewards. After the sons of God ignite the divine fire and become gods, those with high talents can enter civilized institutions for further studies, while those with average talents need to start working. This is why Kang Yang didn't wake up his daughter. He didn't want to waste his daughter's time even for a little bit. Besides, even if he knew the information, what would it matter? If his daughter was really in danger, he still couldn't help. It's better not to let her distract you. Just rely on yourself for everything. Kang Yang thought, then turned his attention to Mo Chen and jokingly said, "Aren't you worried about him as well?" This time, General Mo also shook his head. "We have already agreed that if it works, he will go with me to join the army. If he fails, he will go to run the business with his mother." Kang Yang knew that General Mo's wife's family was in business, and his family's shops had already spread all over the divine realm. It's better to have a son. He can survive no matter what. As he spoke, the divine consciousness of a son of God danced in the air like a mad snake. After a moment, the divine consciousness was restrained and the mad snake disappeared. Kang Yang took out his bracelet to record. Well, the encounter was one, name. Luu. Divine Realm. A red planet was suspended in the void, with divine power flickering on the planet. It was the kingdom of a certain son of God. Next to it, another planet had turned into a sea of fire. A huge crack ran through the entire planet, and it was obviously on the verge of collapse. After a moment, as the red planet withdrew its divine power, the broken planet could no longer hold on and began to disintegrate from the cracks, then turned into countless fragments and floated into the depths of the void. Faintly, screams could be heard from the fragments of the planet. What a pity! Luu looked at the fragments of the kingdom of God in the void with annoyance. Although he won this encounter, due to the special environment of his kingdom of God, he gained almost nothing except the power of the world. The mountains, rivers, grasslands, and wild animals in the kingdom of God all turned into countless fragments and floated into the depths of the void as the kingdom of God shattered. Luu felt like he had lost countless billions. If his parents knew how wasteful he was when he got home, they might have to eat mixed doubles again. What a waste! With another sigh, he reluctantly withdrew his divine thoughts and shifted his attention to his own kingdom of God. Suddenly, the crimson color of the sky filled his sight. What kind of world is this? As far as the eye can see, the whole world is filled with red. Trees, flowers, mountains, and rivers, without exception, are all the same color. Looking more closely, there were no leaves or fruits on the tree, but only dancing flames on the branches. What flows in the stream is not river water, but magma that emits a pungent smell. Mountains, valleys, every place was filled with red. This is a world on fire. This is Luu's kingdom of God. Luu was truly shocked when he first arrived in the kingdom of God. He was lucky, for this was an extremely special kingdom of God, and the creatures living here were of course equally extraordinary. His followers are creatures called red snakes. They have snake bodies and dragon heads, and are a species between flesh and blood and spirits. They feed on fire, build nests in lava, and are born with the ability to control fire. This is a creature that is extremely close to being extraordinary. Perhaps at present they are still ordinary species, but compared to other creatures, they are undoubtedly the creatures most likely to evolve extraordinary abilities. However, the powerful bloodline resulted in the rarity of this species. It took Luu 40 days to search the entire kingdom of God, and he was able to gather 5,000 red snakes. He defeated the opponent's 30,000 followers with only 5,000 red snakes. His fighting power was extremely powerful. But at the same time, he cannot take away all the resources in the other party's kingdom, and ordinary creatures have no way to survive in his kingdom. Luu was both happy and worried. His followers were indeed powerful, especially in the early stages when most creatures did not have extraordinary abilities. Even though there was a huge difference in numbers, he was confident that he could sweep across most of the divine kingdoms. But on the other hand, if you want to become stronger quickly in the later stages, you will need to consume a lot of precious resources, and the ordinary development route will not work. This is certainly nothing for some sons of God with deep family backgrounds, but Luu's family conditions are average, so he can only take one step at a time and try to establish advantages in the early stages. I wonder what Brother Fang's kingdom of God is like. Luu thought to himself that he would brag about it to Fang Cang after returning to the God realm. Chapter 15. In the divine realm, time goes back to 6 days ago. Because of the sudden increase in world power, Fang Cang's undead power has also been strengthened to a certain extent, allowing him to summon more undead at once. But this approach is undoubtedly crude and consumes a lot of undead power. When Fang Cang controlled the number to only 500 undead summoned each time, the control became much more precise and did not cause too much waste. Currently, there are more than 50,000 undead in the kingdom of God, of which nearly 30,000 are old corpses. Under normal circumstances, these undead are of no use. The current number of undead is enough to sweep across the entire kingdom of God in a short period of time. Too many undead also mean that more death energy needs to be consumed. This is a problem he realized during this battle. Although at present, the power of the world has not been significantly reduced by the consumption of so many undead, he still feels that he should make preparations in advance. So he took back most of the undead power in their bodies, and the death energy was separated and reintegrated into the kingdom of God. Normally, he only needed to keep 30,000 undead for daily work. Fang Cang spent 5 days collecting all the corpses that could be found in the kingdom of God, and then piled them up in a huge basin, including tens of thousands of corpses transported back from Green's kingdom of God. From afar, pale corpses covered the entire basin, forming a huge mountain of bones in the center. Fang Cang made a rough estimate and found that the number of corpses had reached nearly 100,000. This is his biggest gain in this battle. With the power of the undead, he can transform all the bones into real combat power. With so many corpses as preparation, he will no longer be obsessed with slaughtering the creatures in God's kingdom. Maintaining a good ecological environment is undoubtedly more beneficial for long-term development. In this way, Fang Cang digested the gains from the battle bit by bit, while sorting out the big and small problems that still existed in the kingdom of God, and everything became in order. The fusion of the kingdom of God is also progressing steadily. After the battle, the kingdom of God absorbed a large amount of world power, and its fusion progress instantly soared from the original 1% to 20%. This made Fang Cang realize more deeply the meaning of the sentence, "The process of integration with the kingdom of God is actually the process of recognition of the Son of God." Everything he did that was conducive to the development of the kingdom of God would be fed back in terms of the degree of integration. He was even more looking forward to encountering other divine kingdoms again. The harvest from one battle was so rich that it would take a long time to digest. If he could come a few more times, wouldn't he be able to take off? But this is not something he can control now. All he can do is constantly improve his strength and be prepared for the next battle. If you want to quickly improve your combat power, you can start from 3 aspects. The first is to develop the role of the power of the dead, or strengthen its use. Now Fang Cang has 100,000 corpses as his backup, which is enough for him to deal with most battles, but there is a problem: he can't summon too many undead at once. This is very embarrassing. Once an emergency occurs, he can only summon 1,000 undead at a time. This number is of no use in battle. If he wants to summon all of them, it cannot be done in a short period of time. This does not take into account the consumption of his divine power. He thought of the novel he had read in his previous life, in which there was a profession called necromancer. Now he is actually an enhanced version of the necromancer. If he can give the ability to summon the undead to other undead and artificially create more necromancers, then this problem will be perfectly solved. Even if each wizard can only summon 8 or 10, as long as the number is sufficient, they can still awaken 100,000 undead at once. This idea has actually always existed in his mind. As an undead who is determined to create the 4 great calamities, he certainly cannot do it alone. He once tried to use God's gift on the undead. This is a power possessed by all gods. Believers can fight with the help of the power of gods as long as the gods authorize the believers. The more resolute the believer's faith is, the more power he can draw on. The undead, as a race he created, are born fanatics and are absolutely loyal to him, so there is no need to worry about issues of faith. However, after the authorization, those beasts could not be used at all. The undead had no intelligence, and without Fang Cang's orders, all their actions were based on instinct. And the captured frogmen this time were all intelligent beings, which gave Fang Cang hope again. The second is to continue to increase the number of the undead. Fang Cang stood on the top of the mountain, looking at the busy undead below the mountain, silently sorting out his thoughts. Currently, there are only 30,000 undead souls left in the kingdom of God. He has divided these 30,000 undead souls into different areas and spread them all over the kingdom of God. Once a living creature dies, the undead souls will transport the corpse to the bone mountain, and the flesh and blood will be removed for animals to eat. This ensures the integrity of the corpse and does not affect the natural operation of the ecosystem. The undead have transformed from hunters into protectors of the ecological environment. If he wanted to continue to increase the number, in the absence of war, he would have to attack the creatures in the kingdom of God, which was contrary to his plan. Moreover, with the huge mountain of bones, he believed that even if a battle broke out again, there would be enough undead in a short period of time. So don't worry about this one for now. The third is to improve the quality and strengthen the fighting power of individual undead. He already has some ideas about improving individual combat effectiveness. When the kingdom of God absorbed the power of the world, all creatures in the kingdom of God were strengthened once. Although the strengthening was not large, it opened up an idea for Fang Cang. Why did the animals in the kingdom of God become stronger? If we think deeply about this problem, it is not just that animals become stronger because they live on this planet. Everything has a traceable path, and this problem is easy to understand for Fang Cang. Don't forget that he himself is also a beneficiary. This proves that the increase in world power means that all forces with the same origin as it have been strengthened to a certain extent. And what does the world power consist of? Darkness, death, chaos. Yes, this is the unique attribute of the kingdom of God. Ever since the discovery of death energy, Fang Cang has regarded the 3 kinds of energy contained in the power of the world as 3 different forces of the same origin. Death is just a key given to him by the kingdom of God. With this key, he can open the door to this world. Behind the door are 3 different treasures. Currently, he has only obtained one of them, which is the power of death. This power alone is enough for him to study for a long time. If he can obtain the other 2 powers, how powerful will he be? All this sounds simple, but Fang Cang has no idea about darkness and chaos for the time being, but there is one thing he can try. The undead themselves are the product of the fusion of the power of death and the energy of death. If he artificially enhances the output of the 2 forces, can he make the undead more powerful? After the expansion of the kingdom of God, Fang Cang discovered a special place that might be able to help him solve this problem. It was a lake with no living creatures. Chapter 16. Fang Cang stood in front of a huge lake. On the surface, there was nothing unusual about the lake. The water was as dark as ink as usual, and the bottom of the lake could not be seen at a glance. But in his eyes, the lake was emitting a strong smell of death. That's right, it's the kind of smell that escapes after a living thing dies. Death energy has the same origin as the power of the world. It will only escape after a living thing dies, and then dissipate between heaven and earth. The lake before him, which he called dead water, did not have a single living creature in the entire lake, but the deathly aura in it was extremely dense. Even every drop of water in the lake contained a large amount of deathly aura. It was as if the deathly aura was so dense that it was liquefied. This lake appeared only after the expansion of the kingdom of God. He was somewhat curious about what caused this special environment. Could it be that after the power of the world was strengthened, in addition to the living things being affected, the mountains and rivers here also changed? It is not impossible to think so. If the natural environment is also affected by the power of the world, then this phenomenon can be explained. Perhaps even more bizarre environments will appear in the future. When it comes to things he doesn't understand, his approach is usually, if you can't figure it out, just give it a try. This dead water contains a large amount of dead air. If it can be utilized, it will undoubtedly solve many problems for him. The huge divine consciousness instantly turned into a sharp sword and stabbed into the lake. The sticky deathly air was pierced through layer by the sharp sword, and the resistance became greater the further down it went. You know, Fang Cang's divine consciousness can now cover thousands of kilometers in the kingdom of God. With this intensity, he felt obvious resistance in the dead water. You can imagine how high the concentration of death energy is in it. Fang Cang controlled his spiritual thoughts and went downwards, and after a moment, he touched the bottom of the lake. The lake was not deep, probably less than 100 meters, but the deathly aura here was extremely dense, with black prismatic crystals scattered all over the bottom of the lake. With a brief sense of his mind, he discovered that the death energy contained in those crystals was enough for him to revive 100,000 undead souls and still have some left. That is the manifestation of death energy compressed to the extreme. During this short period of time, even with the neutralizing power of the dead, his mind still felt an extremely cold breath. This coldness penetrated deep into the soul. If such a huge amount of death energy was touched by ordinary creatures, they would be lost in it in an instant. No wonder there are no living creatures here. There was a strange gleam in Fang Cang's eyes. He really couldn't imagine what kind of creature could survive here. But this is not the end. For ordinary people, exploring here is probably enough, but his personality is such that he likes to pursue the unknown. In his opinion, all this is just a result. A result of some changes causing the death energy here to be extremely strong. What he wanted to find out was the cause. It's complicated, but what Fang Cang really wants to know is the real reason why this lake was formed. If we know the method, can we artificially create such a dead lake? Can this approach be applied to other areas? Taking a step back, even if the above 2 points cannot be achieved, if the root cause of the problem can be found, it will also help him in how to use the environment here in the future. Fang Cang controlled his spiritual consciousness and continued exploring. The divine consciousness broke through the mud at the bottom of the pool and went all the way down. The deeper it went, the higher the concentration of death energy became. He knew that his guess was correct, there must be something underneath. As the death energy grew thicker, more death energy crystals appeared in his perception. The resistance of his divine sense became even greater. His divine sense had already penetrated 300 meters underground. This distance was too big compared to the divine sense range of 1,000 kilometers on the ground. But at this moment he felt that his mind had fallen into a sticky swamp, and every step forward required a huge amount of energy. A few beads of sweat appeared on Fang Cang's forehead. The result of mobilizing his spiritual power with all his strength caused him to feel a slight tingling sensation between his eyebrows. Call. After a moment, the divine consciousness receded like the tide, and Fang Cang exhaled heavily. It seems that 300 meters is the current limit. I pinched my brows with my fingers, and my head still felt a little tingling. Although this is only the state of consciousness, all the manifestations of the body are reflected here. He knew that the pain at this moment was just an illusion, a natural reaction to overexertion, and it would be fine after a rest. Judging from the current situation, there must be something extraordinary down there. But I can't explore it with my current ability. I'll try again when I'm stronger in the future. Fortunately, there is still dead water that can be used. Although he was comforting himself in his heart, Fang Cang still felt uncomfortable. It was like knowing that a movie was very good and exciting, and he went to great lengths to find the resources and download it, but when he opened it, he discovered that he had to become a member to watch it. Most importantly, he has no money yet. Fang Cang stood by the lake with a dark face. Everything had been going smoothly until he finally encountered a pit. From this day on, large numbers of undead began to take turns to bathe in the dead water. Fang Cang's idea was very simple. If he just wanted to summon the undead, he obviously wouldn't need so much death energy. With the density of the death energy here, letting the undead soak in it for a long time might give them some benefits. After all, the energies in it all came from the same source and there was no rejection. He divided the dead water lake into 3 parts. A part of it is used to soak the undead. Currently, these undead can only soak in the place with the lightest death energy at the lakeside. As long as they go a little deeper, the undead will be dispersed by the thick death energy, and even the trace of undead power in their bodies that serves as a trigger will disappear. The second part was used to soak corpses. Fang Cang gathered some corpses and threw them in. The positions were from near to far, corresponding to different concentrations of death energy. He wanted to do an experiment. If these corpses that had been soaked in death energy for a long time were summoned as undead, would their strength be enhanced? The third part is to soak the living creatures in dead water, half of which are various creatures in the kingdom of God, and the other half are frogmen. As an intelligent race, frogmen have a strong ability to adapt. After Fang Cang captured a large number of frogmen, he simply arranged for them to live in a specific area and sent some undead to guard them. Apart from that, he did not take any other measures against them. This arrangement was also made casually by him. He had not yet figured out what to do with these frogmen. This time he just soaked them and other creatures in the stagnant water, hoping to see if he could gain anything. Finally, Fang Cang fished out some death energy crystals. He opened a few smaller pools nearby and threw these crystals in. He wanted to see if enough death energy could create dead water again. The results of this series of experiments cannot be seen in a short period of time, so Fang Cang is also prepared for long-term experiments. Chapter 17. Dead Water Experiment. On the first day, several animals accidentally drowned while installing fences in the deep water areas. The next day, no change. On the third day, the frogmen were so energetic that they were in the water. All the frogmen were separated and quarantined by gender. On the fifth day, in the living creature experiment area, all creatures showed varying degrees of depression, and the entire area became much quieter. On the eighth day, some animals began to go on a hunger strike. The good news is that enough dead energy seems to have the effect of repairing injuries. It only targets the undead, and the cracks on some of them have disappeared. Start the experiment of repairing the injuries of the undead with the dead energy. Wagwa has been having a hard time recently. He was a young frogman. Just over 10 days ago, in the evil god's kingdom, when countless undead appeared and slaughtered everywhere, he and his brother fled desperately. Fortunately, they were not far from the divine power channel at that time, and the two frogs quickly ran back home. They thought they were safe once they returned home, but who would have thought that God would call them together again? There were even elders and children from the tribe who went with them. This made him, whose faith was already weak, a little overwhelmed, but there was nothing he could do as he dared not disobey the orders of the gods. When the undead army rushed out of the passage, he witnessed the power of the evil god for the first time. It would be great if my god was this powerful. Wagwa thought about it, but pulled his brother and quietly ran to the back of the team. This time he learned his lesson. Although he might not survive if he stood at the back, he would definitely die if he rushed to the front. As he expected, the frogman troops collapsed before the two armies came into contact. During the battle, he and his brother took care of each other, and killed an undead after suffering some injuries. If the clan leader knew about this, he would definitely praise me for my bravery. Oh, the clan leader is gone. When Wagwa realized this, he felt very sad. He hated the gods a little. It was he who took the initiative to provoke the evil god, otherwise no one would have died. The battle came and ended quickly. He persevered to the end. His brother had just died at the hands of those monsters while trying to protect him. Wagwa hugged his brother and looked at the corpses of his tribesmen around him, tears streaming down his face. My brother is gone. The patriarch is gone. Xylee is gone. The home is gone. Wagwa and the surviving tribesmen hugged each other and cried loudly. Afterwards, they were taken to the world of the evil god. I thought that a life like hell was about to begin for me. But after coming here, he found that apart from the harsh environment, the evil god did not seem to have any intention of killing them. So, gradually, his heart calmed down. In his heart, he even felt somewhat grateful to the evil god. The monsters even sent them some food when they had nothing to eat. Until one day, he was brought to a lake as black as ink. On the 12th day, some creatures showed severe depression symptoms. They died in inexplicable fights or committed suicide, but finally there is good news. Fang Cang looked at the short frogman in front of him. May I have your name? A mysterious and grand voice sounded in Wagwa's heart. He couldn't stop shaking all over as he faced God up close for the first time. Great God! My name is Wagwa. Wagwa was lying on the ground with his head lowered, as if he wanted to burrow into the ground. He just glanced at God out of the corner of his eye, and at that moment he felt a stinging pain in his eyes, and tears flowed uncontrollably. What a majestic existence that was! In his eyes, the gods were shrouded in a huge halo, and the light seemed to illuminate the entire world. It felt majestic and powerful, as unattainable as the sun and the moon in the sky. God cannot be looked directly at. Wagwa was shaking even more violently. Fang Cang used his divine sense to explore Wagwa's body. In his perception, the frogman's body was now filled with death energy. In this live experiment, he arranged 500 frogmen and 500 animals of various types. During the period, nearly one-third of the 1,000 experimental subjects were lost due to various reasons. This shows that high concentrations of death air still have negative effects on living things. On the contrary, among the remaining two-thirds of the experimental subjects, nearly half showed signs of death energy entering their bodies. You know, normal creatures will only emit some dead air after death, but these experimental subjects actually did this while they were alive. Living in a high concentration of dead air for a long time, there is a certain probability that you will merge with the dead air. Fang Cang recorded this sentence during his observation, and then he discovered Wagwa. His speed of fusion with the death energy was the fastest among all living things. At this time, his body was filled with death energy, and the death energy flowed through his body without any sense of awkwardness. How do you feel now? Fang Cang conveyed the message through his divine thoughts. This method can overcome the language barrier and allow all living things to understand the meaning. I feel cold. Fang Cang asked puzzledly. Wagwa was a little at a loss, as if he was afraid that Fang Cang would be angry, so he quickly added. God, I mean, it's not that kind of cold, it's just. He seemed to not know how to describe it, and hesitated for a long time before saying, it's like, my body, seems to have lost its temperature. Hearing this, Fang Cang let out a light exclamation. He indeed did not notice this, or rather, he ignored it subconsciously. Frogmen have the nature to regulate their body temperature, and the physical manifestation of death energy tends to be cold, so he did not think about this aspect at all when he was investigating. After being reminded, and observing carefully, they found that Wagwa's body was indeed very cold, which was undoubtedly abnormal. Frogmen regulate their body temperature similarly to frogs. They will only lower their body temperature when they need to hibernate to reduce consumption. But at this time, Wagwa is still actively active. His current situation feels more like corpse. Fang Cang clapped his hands fiercely and thought of a suitable adjective. As we all know, human body temperature is generated through cell metabolism. The disappearance of Wagwa's body temperature means that his metabolism has stopped. But he is alive and well now, and his body doesn't show any signs of stiffness, so what is replacing the cells and allowing him to move normally? Dead air. The death energy spread throughout Wagwa's body, helping him complete the work of his cells and allowing him to live in a state similar to death. This strange phenomenon reminded Fang Cang of the living dead. A living corpse? Or the living dead? No matter what he is called, Wagwa is no longer a normal creature. His current state is closer to that of the undead. But he is not Fang Cang's follower, and there is no line of faith connecting him. The only difference between the two may be that, the power of death. Chapter 18. Fang Cang liked to delve into things, and the feeling of understanding more and more as he thought about it made him tremble all over. Suppressing his inner excitement, Fang Cang once again turned his gaze towards Wagwa. Can you control that kind of power now? He was referring to the death energy in Wagwa's body. Wagwa closed his eyes, felt it carefully, and then shook his head. God, I feel a force within me that is taking over my body, but I can't control it. Fang Cang nodded without further investigation. He himself needed to use the power of the undead to control the death energy, so he was not surprised by the little frog's answer. Just bear with it for a moment. What? Wagwa looked up in surprise, but before he could react, the undead beside him suddenly pounced on him and waved its claws in his terrified eyes. Ah! Spare my life, ah! Wagwa's scream was only halfway through and he stopped, looking at his stomach with a confused look on his face. I saw a faint wound on his slightly bulging belly caused by the undead's scratches. There was no bleeding from the wound, but there was a faint aura of death lingering there. Does it hurt? Fang Cang asked. It doesn't hurt. Wagwa answered honestly. He was a little confused and didn't understand what was going on. Fang Cang was thinking silently, and the scene was quiet for a while. The claws of the undead were undoubtedly sharp. Under his control, although he did not use his full strength in the attack on Wagwa, it would not leave only a faint wound. The attack acted directly on the flesh. According to the physical strength of ordinary creatures, at least a piece of flesh would be lost after being hit by such a blow. This phenomenon was beyond his expectations. Now it seems that the death energy not only allows Wagwa to move normally, but also takes over Wagwa's body completely. In addition to replacing his metabolism, his pain nerves also disappeared, and he also gained the ability to defend himself. In Fang Cang's perception, the attack just now was not due to the strength of Wagwa's physical defense, but the fact that at the moment of the attack, the death energy spontaneously appeared at the injured position, helping him to offset part of the attack. If I'm not mistaken, his body also has the ability to heal itself. Fang Cang frowned. Death energy has the effect of healing the undead. This ability has been discovered before. As a creature whose body is completely taken over by death energy, Wagwa should have the same characteristics. Once again, issue an attack order to the undead through the line of faith. This time without any warning, the undead pounced directly on Wagwa. One claw. Attack right at his heart. Death energy appeared instantly, but this time the undead used all its strength, and a slightly deeper wound instantly appeared on Wagwa's chest. Wagwa closed his eyes tightly, not daring to look at this scene. Although he was extremely scared, he did not dare to make a sound. It was obvious that the god was testing something. Wagwa is very smart. From the time his body changed to the time he met the gods, he has been thinking about how to survive. Now he has realized that the gods are very interested in the changes in his body, and all he can do is to cooperate with the gods in the experiments as much as possible. 2 claws, 3 claws. The powerful defense of death energy has its limits after all. After only a few attacks, a huge wound was left on Wagwa's body, revealing a dark heart. The heart had stopped beating and there was not much blood on the wound. It all seemed like he was facing a corpse. Does it hurt? Fang Cang asked the same question again, but this time his tone fluctuated a little. It doesn't hurt. It was the same answer, but this time Wagwa's voice was firm and powerful. Take it out. Wagwa paused, then reached directly into his chest. This time the action was quick and decisive, without any hesitation. When he stretched it out again, he was holding a heart tightly in his hand. That is your own heart. Wagwa's body was shaking, not sure if it was because of fear or some other reason, but that extremely weird feeling hit his mind. He lost his sense of pain and he no longer bled. Sweat, tears, all the reactions that should have occurred were gone. Immortality. Fang Cang's eyes were fixed on the frogman in front of him. Wagwa's body began to acquire immortality, which he considered to be even more powerful than his undead spirit. In terms of individual combat power alone, the Wagwa has death defense, can recover from injuries, and has the characteristics of immortality, making it far stronger than the undead. On the other hand, the fighting power of the undead is only slightly stronger than that of ordinary beasts. Of course, the real combat power cannot be compared in this way. The case of Wagwa is an individual case. Even if it can be mass-produced in the future, it will take a sufficiently long period of time and a large amount of dead energy. Relatively speaking, the cost of the undead is much lower. Their real horror lies in the fact that their numbers increase as they are defeated, and their killing instinct without any knowledge of fear. It would be nice if we could create an undead army. The appearance of a legion composed entirely of undead beings on the battlefield would undoubtedly be terrifying and deadly to the enemy, but as soon as this idea came out, it was quickly rejected. There's no other reason, the cost is too high. This cost mainly refers to the time cost. So far, only Wagwa has been a successful case among 1,000 live experiments. Even if some other creatures have the same characteristics in the future, it still doesn't mean much to him. Although the combat power of the undead is slightly higher than that of the undead, it is still limited and does not have an overwhelming advantage. This means that in a battle involving hundreds of thousands of creatures, even if there are thousands of undead, the impact on the battle will not be significant. The value is too low compared to their manufacturing cost. This means that undead cannot appear as a combat unit. Their true value is that they retain their wisdom while possessing immortality. This is what Fang Cang truly values. In the future, perhaps they could be used to participate in battles as commanders, or to perform some special tasks. It would be a waste if they were only used for combat. Of course, the premise of all this is that they can be transformed into his own followers. Fang Cang left, and he just ordered the undead to send Wagwa back to the Dead Water Lake. This time he did not use the power of the dead on Wagwa. He had tried to use the power of the dead on a living thing before, but what he ended up with was just a vegetable. Although the current Wagwa can no longer be considered a living creature, as the first undead to appear, it is still very meaningful to him. He wants to wait and use other undead creatures for experiments when they appear. When Wagwa raised his head again, the figure that could not be looked at directly had disappeared. He collapsed to the ground in an instant, his body shaking continuously. I have become a monster. Wagwa murmured softly. The undead on the side stared at each other, a grey flame flickering gently in its empty eye sockets. Hey, hey, hey. A strange voice was heard, and it was unclear whether it was crying or laughing. The little frogman held his heart in his hand. Kneel on the ground. Chapter 19. The experiment continues. In the experiment on the undead, the results were as Fang Cang expected. A large amount of death energy can indeed enhance the strength of the undead. According to Fang Cang's perception, the undead who had been soaking in stagnant water for a long time had gained varying degrees of enhancement in speed and strength. The function of death energy is not only to allow the undead to move freely. In the process of penetrating into the bones, it also washes away the impurities in the bones over and over again. This process is like cleaning their bones and marrow. Fang Cang couldn't help but look forward to it. Although the process would be very slow at present, if it continued like this, would the bones of the undead become as hard as gold and iron under the forging of death energy? There is no doubt that this experiment was successful. Under Fang Cang's arrangement, some undead souls began to move deeper into the dead water, where the concentration of death energy was higher. On the other hand, in the experimental area for the corpses, the results were the same. The corpses that had been soaked in stagnant water for a long time were slowly permeated by the deathly aura. In this state, when Fang Cang transforms them into undead, the strength of these undead will naturally be much higher than that of normal undead. The emergence of dead water brings a lot of benefits to the world. Kingdom of God, Bone Mountain. 100,000 corpses filled this huge basin, and more corpses piled together to form a towering mountain of bones. A faint aura of death lingered over the entire Bone Mountain. This was because too many corpses were gathered together, and the death aura escaping from them had no time to dissipate. Fang Cang was suspended in the air, his divine power surging. Boom! A huge roar came from all directions, getting louder and louder and closer and closer. A pitch-black dragon appeared from the sky, and the sound came from inside the dragon's body. Then came the second and third. Several dragons rose from different directions, roared into the sky, and finally gathered around Fang Cang. It was a giant dragon formed by the confluence of countless streams of water. The streams collided with each other, making a roar similar to a dragon's roar. Divine power permeated Fang Cang's body. As his mind moved, all the dragons dispersed from the air and formed a huge water curtain that spread over dozens of kilometers. The water curtain covered the sky and the sun, rushing towards the basin with a devastating force. Just as the water curtain was about to touch the ground, its momentum came to an abrupt halt. Under the control of divine power, it turned into a winding river, gently seeping through countless white bones and gradually submerging them. The basin became a lake. Afterwards, Fang Cang evenly threw hundreds of death crystals into the lake. Hey, this is really not something a human would do. Exhaling heavily, Fang Cang complained inwardly. All these actions seemed majestic and powerful, but the cost was enormous. No wonder he had never heard of any god personally taking action in the battle in the kingdom of God. It was because it was a thankless task. The gods do have the ability to change the world in their own kingdom, but that requires the gods to consume a large amount of divine power to achieve it. And if this ability is used in the enemy's kingdom, the effect will be greatly reduced. Just the action of controlling the water flow just now consumed enough divine power to be converted into the power of the undead, which is enough for him to summon tens of thousands of undead. If used in battle, the destructive power would be hard to say. After all, there is a difference between living people and dead things. This series of arrangements were all due to another experiment by Fang Cang. In several pools where death energy crystals were placed, a faint death energy had begun to dissipate. Although the death energy in these pools was far less than that in a dead water lake, it was enough for Fang Cang. The concentration of dead air at the edge of the dead water lake is not high. The undead don't need too much dead air at the beginning. This is a gradual process, and as time goes by, the dead air in the pool will become thicker. In short, the function of the water pool is only to dilute and release the dead air in the crystals. That's why Fang Cang took the above action. Compared to moving those corpses one by one, transforming the basin into a lake would undoubtedly be more convenient. He diverted several rivers near the basin, and then threw death crystals into the basin, allowing the corpses to slowly be contaminated with death energy, and when summoned when needed, they would all be the undead plus version. What should the basin where bones are stored be called? Pelvis. Let's just call him Guhai. Fang Cang plans to dump all the corpses here in the future. The current lake will become a sea sooner or later. Day 20 of the Dead Water Experiment. It has been exactly 2 months since Fang Cang came to the Divine Realm. The live experiment in Dead Water Lake has officially come to an end. At the beginning, Fang Cang threw 1,000 creatures into the stagnant water. Now, only 200 of them are left. The bodies of these 200 creatures have been filled with death energy, which means that they all possess the immortal characteristic. Among them, there were about 100 surviving frogmen, and the other animals combined were less than 100, with a probability of only 2 out of 10. This ratio is quite low. Dead Water Lake. In front of Fang Cang were 200 undead creatures. All the frogmen, including Wagwa, knelt on the ground. The other animals were shaking restlessly, and let out a cry from time to time. Fang Cang felt that he was becoming less and less of a good person. Turning our attention to Wagwa, this short frogman also had his head down at this time. The death energy in his body did not increase in the following days, and he remained in the same state as when we first met. The huge wound on his chest had disappeared at this time, which showed that his recovery ability was indeed good. If it were a normal person, even if he didn't die, it would take several months to recover. A trace of undead power appeared in Fang Cang's hand, and the grey energy flowed, emitting a strong breath of death. The strange thing was that there was another energy hidden inside it. Although that energy was weak, it could blend well with the breath of death. That represents the power of life. The power to dominate death, making the target alive in a dead state, or dead in a living state, an ability between life and death. With continuous use, Fang Cang's understanding of this sentence became more and more profound. The power of death does not just represent death. It also contains the power of life, and the spirit in the undead is the best explanation of life. Living in a state of death, isn't this referring to the current state of these undead bodies? Their bodies are dead, but their souls are still alive. Yes, soul. Through observation and thinking during this period, Fang Cang gradually began to accept the existence of the soul. The reason why undead bodies can move normally is because they are supported by death energy. This state is actually not much different from the undead, but they can still retain consciousness and even possess wisdom, which cannot be explained by death energy alone. According to common sense, the thinking of living things comes from the brain, but at this time their brains have long stopped working. All these phenomena point to the only answer, the soul. Before this, Fang Cang had always believed that the phrase living in a state of death referred to the undead. After seeing the undead, he realized that the undead were not actually alive. They were just tools without minds. The immortal body, in which the body is dead but the soul is alive, obviously fits the meaning of this sentence better. As for whether the answer to all this is correct, it depends on the next result. Fang Cang threw out the power of death in his hand. If the word death represents power, then does the word spirit represent the soul? Chapter 20. Fang Cang thought about a lot of things during this period, especially regarding the use of the undead. At the beginning, he used the undead as a tool to attract death energy. He mixed the power of the undead with the death energy and injected it into the corpse, thus he created the undead. Later, he realized that the power of the undead was not just a tool, but because he had no ideas, he did not make much progress in using the power of the undead. The only result was the creation of several vegetables. Until he realized the existence of the soul. This discovery helped him figure out many of the problems he had encountered before. Yes, because they have no souls, the dead have no consciousness. And because of the existence of the soul, the immortal body can retain consciousness. This also involves the use of the undead. Before, he would directly penetrate into the bodies of the undead. This simple and crude method actually represented invasion. Those dead bodies have no souls in their bodies, so they can certainly be turned into undead by direct invasion. Living organisms already have souls in their bodies. When the power of the undead enters their bodies, the part representing the spirit conflicts with the other party's soul. In this way, these animals become vegetables. Under this premise, Fang Cang has already thought of 3 uses for the undead. The first is the invasion that has been used all the time. This method is mainly used against creatures without souls, such as the undead. The second is fusion, which is to integrate the spirit into the opponent's soul. This is equivalent to engraving his mark in the opponent's body, but it will not hurt the opponent's soul. The third is stripping, using the characteristics of spirit to strip out the opponent's soul. He hasn't figured out the effect of the third point yet, but this operation should be able to be completed. Now, he used the second method on the undead. The target chosen by Fang Cang was a jackal. Under Fang Cang's control, the power of the undead abandoned its previous tyranny and instead, like a spring breeze and drizzle, moisture rising and penetrating into the opponent's body bit by bit. This process was not as quick as summoning the undead. Fang Cang waited quietly. About a quarter of an hour later, a faint line of faith quietly connected him. It's done. Feeling the emotions coming from the line of faith, Fang Cang knew that it was time to end this experiment. The fusion of the power of the dead requires delicate control and cannot be released in large quantities like summoning the undead, but for him, the rest is just a matter of time. Fang Cang's success this time was not accidental. With the early accumulation and a lot of practice, when stagnant water appears, all the gains become natural in a series of experiments. If Fang Cang did not have this enthusiasm for research, perhaps he would still be able to only control a few little skeletons to fight. In the following time, 200 creatures with immortal characteristics were arranged together. In order to distinguish them from the undead, Fang Cang collectively called them undead. The name comes from their characteristics and also from Fang Cang's nostalgia for his previous life. Wagwa was officially appointed as the first commander of the undead, or he could also be called the patriarch. Fang Cang hoped that this clever little frogman could use his intelligence and talents to research more characteristics of the undead. Batches of frogmen were sent to the dead water lake to undergo death energy transformation. There were about 30,000 frogmen captured at the beginning and the wild frogmen captured later. As the only intelligent race in the Kingdom of God, Fang Cang only sent half of them to the dead water lake, and the rest remained in their original state. As for other kinds of animals, Fang Cang did not make any arrangements. These animals had no intelligence. While they retained their consciousness, they were more easily affected by emotions. As warriors, Fang Cang thought they were unqualified. He assigned this task to Wagwa, asking him to conduct experiments on different species to try to find some organisms that transform faster or have special functions. The 70th day of the Kingdom of God. Wagwa led the undead to build wooden houses in the Kingdom of God, and he also personally erected a huge statue for the undead and frogmen to worship every day. Fang Cang did not interfere with this. Facts have proved that the power of faith provided by intelligent followers is indeed far greater than that of the undead. Now his degree of integration with the Kingdom of God has increased to 25%, a large part of which was gained after defeating Green before. Unfortunately, whether it was good luck or bad luck, he never encountered other kingdoms of God since that time. Currently, the number of undead has grown to 60,000. Dead water helps share some of the consumption, and more undead also provide him with more faith. The transformation of the undead was still in progress, and he estimated that the final number would be around 3,000. His faith grew steadily, and various creatures gradually integrated into this place and began to multiply and thrive. Everything in the Kingdom of God was in order, but Fang Cang still reached a bottleneck. The operation of the entire Kingdom of God no longer required him to worry about anything, and everything was in order. But for him, this was equivalent to stopping development. The power of faith is slowly accumulated by these followers, and sooner or later it will reach the level required to ignite the divine fire, but that will have to wait for a few years. His followers have no advantage in gaining faith. According to the normal process, it would take at least 100 years to accumulate little by little from the Son of God to a God, which would take 1 year to reach the realm of gods. This period of time requires the Son of God to constantly consolidate faith, and it also gives his followers time to reproduce. In the absence of fighting, the development speed of the Kingdom of God is indeed limited, and this is also the choice of most people. But Fang Cang is different. First of all, his followers do not need time to reproduce. As long as he has corpses, he can quickly raise a large army, which ensures combat effectiveness without consuming too many resources. Secondly, the undead do not need to eat, which avoids the need to find many living beings to provide food for their followers. The advantage of being undead allows him to develop rapidly and even reach saturation in a short period of time. On the contrary, the power of faith provided by the undead is too little, and he needs more time to accumulate it bit by bit. This made Fang Cang very uncomfortable. Although he had a large number of followers, he was unable to gain a large amount of faith, which undoubtedly seriously slowed down his development. As a kind of followers who only have instincts, the power of faith provided by each undead is not even 1/10 of that of an undead. The faith provided by 60,000 undead souls is not as good as that of 6,000 immortals. It is conceivable that as time goes by, the gap between him and other sons of God will become bigger. These creatures that win by numbers are completely useless when there is no fighting. Fang Cang had thought about summoning more undead, but this approach could only temporarily alleviate the current situation and was only a temporary solution. He has thought it through clearly. His future development path is to fight non-stop. Only in battle can the undead demonstrate their greatest value. Finally, after several days of thinking, Fang Cang made a decision. He wants to return to the divine realm ahead of time. Chapter 21. Fang Cang wanted to return to the divine realm ahead of time. He wanted to find the true God and ask if there was any way he could help him. Otherwise, given his current condition, the longer he delays, the more disadvantageous it will be for him. His kingdom of God is not the kind that can become powerful by simply developing silently. The reason that prompted him to finally decide to do this was because his dead soul authorization was successful. Fang Cang has never forgotten the idea of creating a necromancer. After the undead appeared, he used the divine gift on Wagwa, and the result was good. The frogmen, who possess both core dependence and intelligent race, perfectly meet the requirements after becoming undead. With Fang Cang's authorization, they also gained the ability to use dead spirits. When Wagwa was using the undead, Fang Cang could clearly feel that a force of undead instantly descended upon Wagwa along the line of faith. Fang Cang had already explained to him the use of undead in advance, so this time Wagwa directly used the power of undead to draw up the death energy between heaven and earth and released it on the corpse in front of him. At that moment, the trace of divine power in Fang Cang's body also disappeared. He summoned an undead just like that. The strange thing is that this undead still has a line of faith connecting him, but in his perception, there is another line connecting him to Wagwa. That is not a line of faith. Here, all living beings can only believe in one God. The function of that line is more like a spiritual connection. As the summoner, Wagwa can give orders directly to his undead through the spiritual connection. God, I can also summon the undead. Wagwa knelt on the ground excitedly and kowtowed to his god. That's the undead. The undead who once killed countless frogmen. He had fought against the undead before and experienced their terror firsthand. They are a group of demons who only know how to kill. During the time in the kingdom of God, he got to know more about these undead spirits. They are the God's exclusive followers and the sharp blades for God's external conquests. Now, he actually got the authority to command the undead. Praise the great God. Use all your strength and try to see how many undead you can summon at once. Yes. Wagwa stood up excitedly, the image of God appeared in his mind. He closed his eyes, prayed devoutly, and praised God. An even more powerful divine power descended upon him. He stretched his hands towards the sky, the power of death flowing through his fingertips, and a majestic death energy was like a rolling dark cloud, pressing down from between heaven and earth. The deathly energy, carrying the power of the undead, rushed into the sea of bones in front of him. The sound of bones rubbing against each other rang out one after another, and pale figures stood up from the sea of bones. Fang Cang nodded in satisfaction upon seeing this, and automatically filtered out the childish lines from Wagwa when he was praying. There were about 100 undead in front of him, a number that exceeded his expectations. Although this scene today seems insignificant, it has brought about a qualitative change for him. From now on, you will be called Necromancer. Fang Cang did not use the name Undead. As a user of the undead, he had higher ambitions for this group of followers. In this way, Fang Cang's Necromancer army was finally established, and he finally selected 1,000 frogmen and gave them divine gifts. It's not that he doesn't want more. When the Necromancer casts his ability, the divine power consumed comes from him. If the number is too large, he can't bear it. Divine Square. King Yang had just ordered people to carry away a son of God whose kingdom was shattered. Before he could catch his breath, another person's spiritual power was severed and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, General Mo arrived in time and helped the other party stabilize his sea of consciousness. At this time, they had been here for 17 hours. During this time, there were many sons of God who had withdrawn from the divine domain, which kept the two of them busy and happy. Fortunately, there are still some gods to help. This is the case every year at this time. These new sons of God are the future of human civilization, and they have to be taken seriously. The good news is that he has discovered quite a few good talents among this year's sons of God. The early performance of a son of God is likely to correspond to his future achievements. Although this statement is not absolute, we can still learn something from it. As long as these sons of God do not die prematurely, they will be vigorously cultivated. The quality of the sons of God each year also indirectly reflects the rise and fall of a civilization. Powerful gods can seize more world power for civilization, and world power will also give birth to more gods with extraordinary talents. Take a break. Kang Yang said as he looked at General Mo who had just finished his work. During this period, one son of God and kingdom of God after another were destroyed, and there were even a few that had been specially marked by Kang Yang. They felt sad to see this, but there was nothing they could do. This is the law in the divine realm. This is a test for the sons of God. Even if they are true gods, they cannot participate in it unless the king of God takes action. In all civilizations, the god kings are like nuclear weapons and will not take action easily. This leads to the highest loss ratio of the sons of God in the entire world of gods. Even the gods who are the backbone of the force did not suffer such high casualties. If it weren't for that brat, I wouldn't be so tired. General Mo sighed. Originally, he had nothing to do with this god's descent ceremony, but he was worried about his son, so he volunteered to participate. Now that he is here, he cannot just stand by and watch. He is not complaining. It is the future of civilization and he is willing to contribute. But if his son doesn't live up to his expectations, he will always be upset. I must have a good talk with him when I get back this time. The infuriating thing is that until now, there has been no movement from Mo Chen. On the other hand, Kang Yang's daughter had already won the Divine Kingdom War 4 hours ago and successfully entered the training list. Kang Yang knew about Mo Jiang's situation and didn't want to say much. Everyone has different ways of educating their children. At least he was satisfied with his daughter's current performance. While the two were chatting, the divine consciousness of a son of God in a corner of the square suddenly disconnected from the divine realm. The faces of those who had been observing the situation in the square changed. That son of God was also on the training list. The difference was that he was the first to activate the talent of the kingdom of God. He also defeated the son of God of an alien race in the early days, and was one of the key targets for observation. The future achievements of this kind of son of God will generally not be too low. If the kingdom of God is broken at this time, it will undoubtedly be a huge loss. The two of them instantly appeared behind the son of God, and Kang Yang sent out his divine thoughts, trying to stabilize the other party's sea of consciousness. General Mo also had a serious expression on his face, for he knew the significance of this son of God to civilization. But his expression only lasted for a moment before it turned into astonishment. Kang Yang was also puzzled. The other party did not vomit blood like other sons of God, and his divine consciousness was also very stable. In this situation, the two looked at each other and saw the strangeness in each other's eyes. At this moment, Fang Cang, who had just withdrawn from the kingdom of God, saw two pairs of puzzled eyes as soon as he opened his eyes. One of them even reached his divine mind into his sea of consciousness and gently stroked it. You guys, okay. Fang Cang greeted him with a guilty conscience. Chapter 22. You said you have reached a bottleneck. Not really, it's just that my followers are not suitable for stable development. If I continue to drag it out like this, I will lose my advantage. In the square, one person was sitting cross-legged and two were standing. Fang Cang told the two true gods about his situation and was now looking at them with a guilty conscience. He knew the rules of the god's descent ceremony. The true god would watch over them for the first 24 hours, while in the later stages the gods would lead the team and take care of their daily needs. They have only spent 70 days in the divine realm. According to normal development, they can only control the kingdom of God after igniting the divine fire. He didn't want to be treated specially, but this was a waste of time for him. He had no choice but to ask for help from the true god to see if they had any good ideas. Kang Yang and the other man pondered over Fang Cang's words. This situation is rare. Even if a general son of God is gifted and develops rapidly in the early stages, it still takes time to consolidate. The construction of the kingdom of God is not only reflected in the degree of integration. The faith of the core followers, the improvement of combat power, the allocation of equipment, the transformation of the environment of the kingdom of God, including the development of innate magical skills, etc., all require time to complete. These are not things that can be accomplished in a short period of time. Even the most powerful followers would find it difficult to do everything well. Therefore, this stage before igniting the sacred fire is used to lay the foundation. The better the foundation, the smoother the future development will be. The battle of gods involves all aspects, and they may encounter all kinds of strange followers. Once they fail to do something well and are caught by the opponent, the result may be the destruction of the kingdom of God. Therefore, their first reaction to Fang Cang's words was that the other party was joking, and they subconsciously rejected it, even though he was a seeded player on the list. You. Tell me more about your family members. Kang Yang was about to refuse when he was interrupted by General Mo. He glanced at the other party and decided to wait and talk later. Fang Cang nodded after hearing this, and then explained his situation to the two of them in detail. The characteristics of the undead, the combat power of the undead, and the undead, and finally even talked about the dead water lake and the bone sea. Fang Cang explained everything in detail without hiding anything. Undead. Undead. After hearing Fang Cang's words, the two true gods fell silent again. They were both thinking about what kind of existence the followers Fang Cang mentioned were. General Mo thought of more. In the divine world, countless gods have risen and fallen. Over the years, the number of their various followers has become incalculable. The undead followers like the one Fang Cang mentioned are certainly not unique. On the contrary, this kind of followers have appeared many times a long time ago. Some of them are even much stronger than the undead. They can only be regarded as relatively rare, and in terms of overall strength they are not even ranked in the divine world. But there is a key point here: Fang Cang's summoning cost is too low. According to Fang Cang, if the divine power is sufficient, as long as there is a corpse, it can be transformed into an undead instantly. Of course, General Mo's vision would not be like Fang Cang's, who only considered the battle of hundreds of thousands of followers in front of him. In his opinion, Fang Cang could raise a combat force of over 10 million people in a short period of time. With this number of followers, he is invincible at the Son of God stage. No matter how powerful the Son of God is, he cannot withstand the attack of more than tens of millions of followers. He can even lead an entire battle line by himself and deal with multiple Sons of God alone. This is very scary. Even if there is some exaggeration in Fang Cang's words, as long as it can be guaranteed to be 80% true, it is enough. No extraordinary creatures will appear at this stage. The kind of extraordinary creatures that can fight against 10,000 alone can only be encountered at least in the God stage. Besides, the combat power of Fang Cang's followers is not low. It is probably at the middle level among ordinary people. It is not top-notch, but it is enough. As the true god of the military, General Mo's eyes flashed with a strange light at this moment. What do you want to do? After a long time, Kang Yang spoke first, and it was obvious that he also realized the value of this young son of God. I want to move freely. Afraid that the other party didn't understand what he meant, Fang Cang explained again. I haven't ignited the divine fire yet, but I want to control the movement of the kingdom of God so that I can kill more enemies. Fang Cang said this, feeling somewhat strange inside. Don't they doubt the truth of what I say? He didn't know that he had already been included in the key list. Kang Yang and the other two had never doubted his strength. Without powerful followers, his previous achievements would not have been possible. If they were ordinary sons of God, they would not listen to so much from the other party. How could they have the courage to make demands without strength? Do you know the rules of God's land? Kang Yang spoke again, but instead of giving a direct reply, he asked him a question. It is inaccessible above the Son of God. Fang Cang answered directly that everyone knew this rule. Then do you know what kind of power is needed to help you achieve your idea? Fang Cang didn't know about this. He didn't even know the situations of the several stages of the gods. This time he was just trying his luck. With the knowledge of the true gods, if they could help him, that would be the best. If not, he could only accumulate faith honestly. The Son of God only needs to ignite the divine fire to become a god. Everyone knows this. Gods have absolute control over the kingdom of God and can move freely in the divine domain. They are also the backbone of every civilization. Kang Yang told the story slowly and also helped him with his studies. Above the gods are true gods. True gods need to condense their divine nature. This process is also a process of sorting out their own path to becoming gods. Only by truly mastering and understanding their own innate divine skills can they achieve this. At this stage, true gods can already break through the limitations of the plane through the imprint of the divine nature and temporarily project the kingdom of God into the divine realm. The divine realm and the divine domain belong to two different world planes. The gods can travel between the two realms by descending their consciousness, but it is extremely difficult to break through the limitations of the planes. True gods can do this. Innate divine skills are the key to becoming a true god. In the world of gods, 99% of people are stuck at this level alone. How many people only use their innate divine skills as some kind of skill? Innate divine skills represent the core attributes of the kingdom of God and are the key to whether the gods are powerful or not. Its importance is even higher than that of the core followers. Fang Cang has good talent, and King Yang doesn't mind telling him some things in advance, which can help him avoid some detours. Above the true gods are the God Kings. God Kings are different from other stages. Their combat power may not be much stronger than the true gods, but there is one thing that the true gods cannot do. The God King can reversely bring his kingdom to the God realm. The prerequisite for achieving this, and the key to becoming a God King, is that every God King integrates himself into the entire God realm. They are equal to the God realm but higher than the God realm. Only in this way can the God King break through the boundaries of the planes and bring the kingdom of God to the God realm. Hearing this, Fang Cang understood in his heart. No wonder there was only the God King planet here and he had never heard of the true God planet. He was curious before. The kingdom of God was clearly in the God realm, so how could it appear in the God realm? After hearing King Yang's explanation, he finally understood the reason. If you want to achieve your idea, you need to rely on the power of the God King. Only they can break through the rules of the God's land. When King Yang said this, he looked directly at Fang Cang with a meaningful look in his eyes. So, what kind of price are you willing to pay for this? Chapter 23. So, what price can you pay for this? Fang Cang stared at King Yang blankly, completely confused. He had never thought that a seemingly simple matter would actually involve the God King. To him, the true God was an unattainable existence, let alone the God King. For a moment his mind raced, thinking about what he could give. But when I think about it, I am alone now and don't have much to give. Otherwise, the true God doesn't have any strange hobbies, right? General Mo looked at Fang Cang speechlessly. The boy's eyes were rolling around, and he had no idea what he was thinking about. I don't seem to have anything to pay. Can I buy it on credit? Fang Cang smiled awkwardly. As expected, he could call the wind and rain in the divine realm, but when he returned to reality, he had to cook for others. King Yang shook his head and answered directly and cruelly, you can't afford it on credit. Everything involving the God King is of great importance. Every God King in human civilization is in charge of one side and will not take action easily. Hearing this, Fang Cang felt a little disappointed, but he was not surprised. He didn't think he had the face to ask the King of Gods to make an exception and help him. Moreover, as the cornerstone of civilization, those alien civilizations must also be paying close attention to the God King's every move. But King Yang suddenly changed the subject and paused intentionally, whetting people's appetite. Fang Cang's thoughts, which had just calmed down, were brought up again, and he was eagerly waiting for the other party's next words. However, in your situation, you don't actually need the God King to take action. You don't need the God King to enter the land of God's descendants. You can just use the power of the God King to do it. King Yang smiled slightly, showing the charm of the old handsome man, but Fang Cang was confused. You don't need the God King to take action, but you still need to rely on the power of the God King? Isn't this contradictory? He knew in his heart that since King Yang said so, he must have his own ideas, but he still felt a little anxious. Riddler should be damned. Your situation is rather special. I can help you, and I don't need you to buy on credit, but you have to do a few things. Just consider it as a task I've assigned to you. You say? Fang Cang nodded. It should be so. There is no free lunch in the world. He had no objection to that. This time the other party did not keep you in suspense and spoke directly. You are currently in the leading position in terms of strength. Ordinary alien sons of God are no match for you, so I hope that while you kill the enemies, you will also do your best to protect other human sons of God. Okay, I know. It's not over yet. King Yang interrupted Fang Cang and his expression became serious. Protecting the Son of God takes priority over killing the enemy. I hope you understand that only by ensuring more manpower can we have more development opportunities in the future. I understand. However, there must be more than 10 million sons of God in our human civilization this time. I can't save many of them by myself. Fang Cang raised his own questions. No matter how strong his own abilities are, he is unable to cope with all of them. Even if he could save dozens or hundreds of sons of God, it would be a drop in the bucket compared to the huge number of tens of millions and would not have much effect at all. Don't you have a necromancer? What do you mean? Fang Cang was a little confused for a moment. What does this have to do with the necromancer? According to what you said, every necromancer can summon 100 undead, right? Yes, if the divine power is sufficient, more can be summoned. Fang Cang nodded, becoming even more confused. That's fine. Kang Yang nodded slightly and looked into Fang Cang's eyes. You can choose to give 1,000 necromancers to each of the sons of God you meet. Ah! Fang Cang frowned, feeling somewhat unhappy. Isn't this going to kill me? How many necromancers do I have to give away like this? Do you think it's a lot? Kang Yang seemed not to notice the other person's emotions and still had a smile on his face. Yes, a little. Fang Cang answered truthfully. Your efforts will not be in vain. You said before that necromancers need to use intelligent creatures for conversion. The ratio is about 1/3, right? Yes. For every 1,000 necromancers you give away, you can ask for 3,000 wise followers from the other party, so you won't lose out. Having said that, Kang Yang paused and smiled. Of course, you can also choose not to take it and get it from the son of God of an alien race. Ah, this. Fang Cang's mind was spinning rapidly, weighing the pros and cons. He asked the true God for help, but the other party would pay a huge price to help him. In this case, it would be difficult for him to refuse. Unless you regret it and give up this opportunity, you can choose to develop slowly on your own. The result of doing so is that he will waste a lot of time accumulating faith, and at the same time he will leave an impression of being cowardly and selfish in the heart of the true God. The growth of gods cannot be separated from the support of civilization, and the consequences of doing so will undoubtedly be very bad for them. Given his current situation, there is no doubt that he is capable of taking on greater responsibilities, and the other party also hopes that he can agree to it. So, no matter from which angle you look at it, he now has only one choice. That is acceptance. While getting help from the true God, I am also helping the true God complete the task of protecting the Son of God of mankind. In this way, everyone will be happy. Although it seems that he will have to sacrifice some necromancers now, it will not be a big loss if he can get replenishment from the human Son of God. After all, if one can move the kingdom of God freely, one will be the biggest beneficiary. Call. After thinking everything through, he said carefully. If I can, I have no objection at all. I will do my best to complete the task, but there is a problem that needs to be solved. The necromancer's abilities were granted to me by God. Their summoning of the undead will also consume my divine power. It's okay if there are few of them, but if there are too many, I'm afraid my divine power will not be enough. Don't worry about that. I have my own way. Hearing this, Fang Cang breathed a sigh of relief. Otherwise, with his limited divine power, he really couldn't afford to support too many necromancers. This would be putting the cart before the horse. After all, divine power was required to ignite the divine fire. Also, what if those sons of God disagree? Fang Cang continued to ask. He didn't want to waste his breath on such things. You can handle this kind of small problem. Well. Fang Cang scratched his head. Let's see what happens. If the other party doesn't agree, can I rob him? Of course, he didn't dare say this out loud. If you encounter special circumstances, it's okay to impose a slight punishment. You can decide for yourself. Kang Yang then added another sentence. Fang Cang was instantly delighted. With responsibility comes privilege. That's about right. Chapter 24. Kang Yang took out a crystal emitting a warm light. Fang Cang looked at the crystal curiously, and saw that the surface of the crystal was as smooth as a mirror, reflecting his face clearly. It was a very young face, about 20 years old, with clear-cut features. His pair of narrow and long eyes were bright and lively, and looked a little weird against the backdrop of the purple divine pattern on his forehead. What a handsome face! Fang Cang sighed to himself, but he couldn't move his eyes away. The person in the mirror seemed to be looking at him, and those eyes were emitting a faint glow. He seemed to see his former self in them. Hello, would you like to try swimming and fitness? There was a drizzle in the sky and people were walking in a hurry. A thin figure stood at the intersection, trying to sell himself to everyone who passed by. Our performance this month is a bit poor, everyone should work harder. A year later, the young man became a manager, but the promotion did not relieve his stress at all, and he became even busier. Mom, I'm not going back this year. The company plans to open a branch next year. On New Year's Eve, the young man was making plans under the desk lamp. He devoted more time to the company, but gradually neglected his family. Mr. Zhang, I toast to you. I guarantee you will be satisfied with this plan. At the dinner table, the young man is gradually no longer young. Although he is full of energy and vigor at the company, he has to ruin his body in private. Is the child asleep? Don't worry. I'll be back soon. The car is the only place where the man feels at ease. He is no longer young, and the double pressure of life and work makes him begin to feel overwhelmed. The man lit a cigarette, and as the tobacco flickered, his lungs felt severe stimulation. A dull cough sounded in the garage. He was sick, with cancer. He didn't tell anyone. After working so hard for so many years, now, looking back on my life, everything has become meaningless. It's just a pity for her and the child. The man whispered softly. Mom, I missed you. Fang Cang. A calling sounded in my heart. Fang Cang suddenly sat up and looked at Kang Yang with horror. What's this? His eyes were red at this moment, and everything he had just experienced seemed like a dream. This is the core of the kingdom of God. As he spoke, Kang Yang calmly wrapped the crystal with his divine power, as if he had forgotten about it just now. To be precise, it should be a part of the core of the kingdom of God and the source of the attributes of the kingdom of God. Hearing this, an idea suddenly flashed through Fang Cang's mind, and he exclaimed, this is the core of the God King planet. Fang Cang's tone was firm. Just a core could make him fall into an illusion in an instant. The previous owner of this kingdom of God must be very powerful. Combined with what Kang Yang said before, the power of the God King is needed. Then the answer is obvious. This is the core of the God King's kingdom. That's right. July Star was once the kingdom of the God King. Its core also contains the power of the God King. Kang Yang looked at the Son of God in front of him with approval. This was the solution he had thought of. As the CEO of July Star, he has the power to mobilize all resources on the planet, which of course includes the core of the kingdom of God. After the death of the July God King, his kingdom was transformed by civilization into a planet suitable for the gods to live in, and the core of the kingdom was also preserved. The power contained in this core originated from that of the God King, and of course it also possessed power that transcends the rules of the divine realm. This is the foundation of human civilization. Each of the 108 God King planets can communicate with the world power of the divine realm. Every year, the new Son of God is selected by the executives of each planet using the world power. When the time comes, I will imprint the power of the core into your sea of consciousness. The power in it will be enough to help you temporarily control the kingdom of God. You only need to hold it, and the power consumed during this period will be borne by the King of God's planet. With an entire God King planet as the source of divine power, Fang Cang's consumption would only be a drop in the bucket even if it were multiplied tenfold. Kang Yang had already thought all this through when Fang Cang described his own situation. Although this would consume part of the core power of the kingdom of God, it would all be worth it if Fang Cang could save more sons of God. True God, does our own kingdom of God also have a kingdom of God core? Fang Cang suddenly thought of the dead water lake. Was the deathly aura that seemed to be tangible also formed by the core of the kingdom of God? Unfortunately, his power was not enough and he failed to detect it. When the gods have a certain understanding of the innate divine skills, the core of the kingdom of God will have a chance to appear. All the power displayed by the core comes from the gods themselves and has nothing to do with the realm. Then if I comprehend more power, will the core of the kingdom of God also change? That is natural. You can regard it as the source of power for you and the kingdom of God. All changes in you will be reflected in the core of the kingdom of God. If you encounter a son of God who possesses the core of the kingdom of God, then try to find it. The core of the kingdom of God contains everything in it. If only the kingdom of God is broken, the God who possesses the core can use it to rebuild the kingdom of God again. Fang Cang nodded seriously, and became more certain in his heart that the existence under the dead water lake was most likely the core of his kingdom of God. As long as you have the core of the kingdom of God, isn't that equivalent to having two lives? If you have the core of the kingdom of God at the Son of God stage, you must be the chosen one of a certain civilization, just like me. Anyway, you definitely can't give the other party a chance to start over. Any questions? No more, please start. Fang Cang said seriously, stretched out his hand to take the core of the kingdom of God handed over by Kang Yang, but this time he didn't dare to look at it again, even though he knew that the other party had wrapped it with divine power. After obtaining the core of the kingdom of God, a warm divine power flowed through it, but it was not as majestic as imagined. Fang Cang guessed that this core might just be a transit station and the divine power was not stored here. At this time, Kanjiang's divine consciousness flowed into the core, and after a slight pause, it entered Fang Cang's sea of consciousness along with a faint divine consciousness. After entering the sea of consciousness, that faint divine thought seeped in bit by bit. Fang Cang felt that although the divine thought was weak, it contained a special power. It seemed insignificant, but when felt carefully, it was endless, as if the whole world was projected into it. That is the power of rules that transcends all gods. Fang Cang closed his eyes, and the divine pattern on his forehead flickered. He descended into the kingdom of God again with this special mark. Are you so confident in him? General Mo, who had been standing aside like a transparent man, spoke at this time. Kang Yang shook his head when he heard this. I'm just helping him out. If it works, that's a good thing. If it doesn't matter. What he didn't tell Fang Cang was that although using the core of the kingdom of God consumes a lot of energy, the power in it can be regenerated. The followers of the July God King are still there, and although he has died long ago, his faith still remains here. As long as these followers still believe in the July God King, the core of his kingdom will never lose its power. This is a no-cost business. General Mo naturally understood the key. If the core of the kingdom of God was used less, Kang Yang might not have the power to deploy it, no matter how great the other party's potential was. If it works, give him to me. Why? You didn't do anything. He's perfect for the military. That won't work either. Chapter 25. Divine Realm. When he opened his eyes again, Fang Cang's consciousness had arrived in his own kingdom of God. After a careful feeling, he felt a mysterious mark quietly floating in his sea of consciousness. At this time, his divine consciousness had not been strengthened at all, but there was a strange power contained in his divine consciousness, which was enough to allow him to ignore certain rules of the divine realm. That's enough. Fang Cang clenched his fists. Now that the biggest problem restricting his growth has been solved, what he needs to do next is to keep fighting and quickly increase his strength through the snowball advantage. Let's go to Dead Water Lake first. Fang Cang's eyes were bright. The emergence of the Dead Water Lake had brought about a qualitative change in his strength. He had always been curious about the existence under the lake. This time, he learned about the core of the kingdom of God through the conversation with Kang Yang, so he was a little impatient to go and see whether the core of the kingdom of God was hidden under the lake. This is also a verification of one's talent. Now his spiritual consciousness has some more characteristics belonging to the God King, and these characteristics may help him break through the obstacles of death. Without further delay, Fang Cang appeared at the edge of the stagnant water lake in a flash. The Dead Water Lake at this time was slightly different from before. Tens of thousands of undead were quietly soaking in the water like corpses, and some of the undead who entered earlier were heading to deeper waters. The deathly energy in the lake water nourishes all the undead little by little, increasing their strength and repairing their injuries. On the other side of the Dead Water Lake are thousands of frogmen who are undergoing the process of becoming immortal. After this period of transformation, most of the frogmen's bodies have been filled with death energy. The only thing left is for Fang Cang to integrate the power of the undead into them. As for those who died on the way, he expanded them into the team of the undead. The cultivation of a capitalist at this moment, Fang Cang perfectly interpreted what it meant to be his person in life and his ghost in death. The huge divine consciousness pierced into the lake again. Fang Cang controlled his spiritual sense all the way downwards and soon touched the bottom of the lake. This time he did not feel any resistance, so he continued to control his spiritual sense to explore downwards, passing through layer after layer of silt. Large chunks of death crystals appeared again, and soon he reached a depth of 300 meters. This was the limit of his last exploration. This time, with the blessing of the mark of the God King, he no longer felt any resistance along the way. Then, 400 meters, 500 meters, 800 meters, 1000 meters. The divine thought is like a falling sword, the sharp blade can easily break through all obstacles, and the unstoppable power is unstoppable. Just like that, Fang Cang no longer hesitated, and his mind went all the way down until a crystal emitting a faint light appeared in his mind. The crystal was about the height of a person, and the entire crystal had a regular polyhedron shape. Although it felt much weaker, there was no doubt that it was the same thing as the core of the kingdom of God that Fang Cang had seen. This is the core of his kingdom of God. At this time, Fang Cang's spiritual sense had explored to a depth of 1,500 meters underground. The closer he got to here, the denser the death energy became. He even discovered a huge death energy vein more than 1,000 meters underground. The vein was formed by countless pieces of dead energy crystals, winding for dozens of kilometers underground. The dead energy contained in it was more than 1,000 times that of the crystals on the lake. However, the crystal detected by Fang Cang at this time was only covered with a faint layer of deathly aura on the surface, which surprised Fang Cang. He originally thought that the formation of the dead water lake was due to the existence of the core of the kingdom of God, but now it seems that this is not the case. The real reason for the formation of the dead water lake is because of that mineral vein. It is unknown how many years the mineral vein has existed on this planet. This time, as the kingdom of God absorbed the power of the world, some kind of transformation occurred, resulting in the formation of such a huge crystal of death energy. However, the properties of this mineral vein undoubtedly come from the core of the kingdom of God. Perhaps the moment the core of the kingdom of God appeared, it gave the mineral vein the ability to condense death energy, which led to the appearance of the dead water lake. If not for this, Fang Cang didn't know how many years it would take to discover this treasure hidden deep underground. The core of the kingdom of God is an irreplaceable and non-renewable energy crystal. It has the same origin as the kingdom of God and is connected to the Son of God. Its function is certainly far more than that, but Fang Cang has no use for it at his current stage. All he has to do now is to protect it well and avoid being found by the enemy. Because it involves a dead energy vein, Fang Cang decided not to move the core of the kingdom of God for the time being. Hiding it so deep underground, it would take some effort for the enemy to find it. There is no need to explain much about the role of the dead energy vein. Such a huge reserve of dead energy is enough for him to consume for a long time. At present, there are also the crystals in the dead water lake, which are enough for the time being. Fang Cang plans to use it when needed. All the accumulations now will become his foundation and help him grow in future development. At this point, Fang Cang no longer had any worries. The next thing he had to do was to control the kingdom of God and allow it to move according to his will. If the kingdom of God is likened to a car, then the Son of God is the driver who took out a loan to buy the car. The process of the Son of God gaining recognition from the kingdom of God is actually equivalent to the process of the driver repaying the loan, except that this store owner is a bit overbearing and will not give the driver the car keys until the loan is repaid. Correspondingly, the seal of the God King is equivalent to a master key. No matter what type of socket it is, as long as there is a hole, I can insert it into it. You can also drive the car away. This is what Fang Cang has to do now. When Fang Cang spread out his divine consciousness, the power of heaven and earth was quickly lured out. The seal of the God King lurking nearby took the opportunity to act decisively. His movements were fast and accurate, and he subdued the power of heaven and earth in an instant, and tied him up in the process. At this time, the kingdom of God had no power to resist and was ready to be exploited. The mark of the God King is also impolite. No matter whether you agree or not, I have already inserted the key, so you just have to bear with it. As a result, the authority of the kingdom of God was taken over by the seal of the God King in a domineering manner. This process sounds exciting, but in fact it only took a moment. Fang Cang's kingdom of God successfully changed hands and was completely controlled by the seal of the God King, who could manipulate it at will. Why did the Son of God rebel? Fortunately, the seal of the God King has no consciousness, and Fang Cang's divine consciousness is connected to the seal of the God King, otherwise, he would be thrown down to the mortal world in an instant. At the same time, this also made him more deeply aware of the horror of the God King. Just a mark could destroy him in an instant, so what about the God King himself? From now on, no matter what you say, you must not provoke the God King. Fang Cang reminded himself secretly. Well, even the true God cannot be provoked. Now Fang Cang was holding the steering wheel of the kingdom of God. Although his driving skills were a little immature, he could already start the car successfully. He set his sights on the sea of stars. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.